This is the Iceman, John Scully, former boxer and boxing trainer now, and I listen to the Ringside Boxing Show.
And happy birthday, John Scully.
Live from Monterey on California's beautiful Central Coast, this is the Ringside Boxing Show. I'm Dennis Taylor, welcoming you to join me and my expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and John J. Responsi today and every week for the hottest, sweatiest show on the West Coast. And now, from Studio 1A, it's the Ringside Boxing Show.
Welcome to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor, and we've got something very special coming your way during the second part of today's show. We've been trying to get an interview for more than 10 years with today's featured guest, and it turned out to be well worth the wait. My partner, John J. Responti, and I connected a couple days ago with the legendary trainer and Hall of Fame broadcaster, newly minted Hall of Fame broadcaster, Teddy Atlas, who was generous enough to give us 90 minutes of his time for a comprehensive conversation about death in the boxing ring and performance-enhancing drugs and the sport's multitude of sanctioning bodies and countless title belts and the desperate need for a national boxing commission, as well as things like who he believes is the best fighter in the world today, which era of fighters is the greatest ever, which heavyweight past or present might have beaten Muhammad Ali on Ali's best night. And the answer to this next question is probably going to surprise and maybe even stun you, where Mike Tyson ranks among the all-time greats in the heavyweight division. And, of course, you know, Teddy Atlas trained Mike Tyson in his heyday. This absolutely ranks among the most interesting interviews we've ever done on the Ringside Boxing Show. It's a classic, and it's coming your way in just a little bit. Before that, our outstanding British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin, will be coming at you with the latest news from the United Kingdom boxing scene, and we'll get it all going as we do every week with our terrific team of expert analysts. Travis Hartman is a professional boxer, trainer, and promoter from Osborne, Missouri, now living and training in Orlando, Florida. Rizwan Zahid is a boxing journalist from Toronto. John J. Responti is chief lead writer for MaxBoxing.com and DogHouseBoxing.com. And John and I wrote Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy, which was an Amazon bestseller. Okay, guys, so since the last time we convened, two fighters have died from the injuries they received in the ring. Maxim Dadashev died on Wednesday. Hugo Santillan died Thursday. And a story that I think fits perfectly into this is the sad news that Dillian Whyte's drug test came out dirty after his victory over Oscar Rivas. The incredible part about this is that the promoter, Eddie Hearn, Britain's National Anti-Doping Panel, and the British Board of Control all knew the results of this 3 days before this fight, and they let it happen anyway. This, to me, is rock bottom for boxing. And I guess my question, one of my questions is going to be, you know, what if Dillian Whyte had killed Oscar Rivas in the ring that night? Would people from those organizations I just mentioned be facing murder trials right now? You know, why the hell wouldn't they? There's only one reason that I can think of that a fight would go forward after it became known that one of the fighters had juiced up his body on performance-enhancing drugs. Money would be lost if the fight got canceled. You know who apparently didn't know, according to his promoter? Oscar Rivas, the fighter who went into the fight and fought a juiced-up opponent that night and lost to him. Rivas' promoter, Yvonne Michel, also says that neither he nor the WBC, the sanctioning body, was informed about this in advance. You know, who knows if any of that's true. But this was all about valuing money over the welfare of fighters. Travis, is there any other explanation that you can think of? What's your take on all this?
No, Dennis, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it was about money. I mean, money was chosen over ethics, over morale, over health, over safety. I mean, that's sickening. I mean, that's actually, when you were telling the news right there, that's the first time I've actually heard that. I had no idea that Eddie Hearn had knew 3 days prior. Yep. And I think you're 100% on point, too. If something bad would have happened to Oscar Rivas, they 100% would have been liable in a lawsuit for not disclosing that information. And how does the boxing commission in London even go for that as well? Why are they not getting some sort of punishment as well? How did just Eddie Hearn know those results and nobody else? I don't understand that. That's just, it's sickening. It's appalling, especially the timing of it. I mean, we've had 2 deaths in a week in boxing, and that just rocks this world when there's 1, let alone 2. And then now it's on the eve of guy testing positive in the heavyweight division, where if you're doing steroids, that's a big deal because you're already a big man. You already throw a lot of weight around. I'm a huge boxing fan, as you guys know. You know, I'm not only a professional boxer for 15 plus years, I am an avid, staunch fan, and that's 100% genuine. I love boxing to the core, but hearing this news just really saddens me. I mean, it turns me off big time on boxing right now because I don't know how they're not looking out for us. I mean, us fighters, when I step in the ring, I want to expect to step in the ring against a clean fighter, especially when nowadays that they can know before the fight. And the fact that they knew about the Dillian Whyte one before the fight even happened, 3 days, is just, oh man, I wish I could hear Teddy Atlas's take on this, because you know Teddy Atlas would be going berserk right now, and I'm just so shocked and astonished right now that I really don't have too many words, because I want to say a lot of bad things, but I kind of deflated. Just hearing this about boxing is just like deflated me. And I mean, if you should hear to my voice, I just don't feel like, what the heck's going on with boxing, guys? Like, this is not good. And myself as a competitor, my health and everything else too, like, it scares me. And then it scares me for the future of our sport, because when somebody passes away or dies doing a sport that I compete in, that we all commentate about, I mean, that's scary. It's definitely scary, and it should be scary. They
didn't tell Rivas.
I don't see how Rivas has to have some sort of a case still as well. Like, I don't know what it would be, but I mean, some kind of endangerment, some kind of, I mean, if you find a good enough lawyer, you can say attempted murder. I mean, you could. Why not? The guy's on steroids. So I think Oscar Rivas, and I honestly think you're going to find out that down the road they are going to do something. I guarantee they do something. But you never know, Dennis. You know, Eddie Hearn's got a lot of money, so Eddie Hearn might be trying to pay off Oscar Rivas right now behind the scenes to kind of put all this aside, because Oscar Rivas has a case. I don't care who you are. I'm not a lawyer, but I can tell you that I could definitely dream up a couple cases against Eddie Hearn, the promoter, the commission, everybody, for letting Oscar Rivas step in the ring against a guy who's already a lethal weapon. Us boxers are already lethal weapons. You put him in there, chemically enhanced lethal weapon, which is sad. It's just saddening. I can't believe it, Dennis. Like, I really can't believe it. It's just, boxing's broken my heart right now. It really is.
Rivas, you know, if Rivas wanted to do the whole sport a huge favor, he'd sue all of those bodies for a zillion bucks and put a red hot spotlight on all those people. That's the kind of ugly publicity that might finally force a change in culture of boxing. You know, the anything goes culture, and lead to an international commission and national commissions that would clean up this really dangerous and reckless Wild West show. To me, this is a monumental scandal, Riz, that ranks with anything I've ever seen in sports, and I cannot believe the headlines haven't been bigger and blacker than they have this week. You know, there's been people, you know, we've seen articles on websites, but I can't imagine that there wouldn't be more outrage than there already is. They knew they were putting a fighter's life at unnecessary risk, and they did it anyway. The British Commission, the promoter, the anti-doping panel, they all just shrugged and said, you know, hey, what about all those ticket sales? You know, I think that's what happened. What's your take on all this, Riz?
I don't think we can say for sure that it was. I'll say this: a promoter's job is not to cancel the fight, right? The promoter's job is to promote the fight. It doesn't seem like it's not like as if Eddie Hearn didn't disclose this information to the commission. if the commission knew, it is their job and it is their responsibility to look out for the safety of everyone there. And they did not do a good job of that, if a job at all. That's where the problem really lies. And then that's where it's kind of shocking that it was allowed to go on. Dillian Whyte has said he's innocent. I'm curious to see what because I think they said initially his first sample was clean, but I think the second one came back positive. But they have to, I'm waiting to hear what, if he's saying it was a contaminated supplement or whatever it is, or I want to hear what their commission standpoint, what made them feel that, they must have felt that the positive result was not intentional, and we didn't see the level or the amount that was in the system. So are they saying because of that, it was a minuscule amount, just enough to get tested, just enough to have a positive flag, but that was it? Whatever the case, there needs to be some sort of response here. This is more of a bad PR nightmare more than anything else. You can't just stay quiet, right? Why isn't the commission coming out and giving their justification on why they allowed this fight to happen? That's where I think the bigger issue lies. If we've seen, guys like Andre Berto has tested positive, went to court and say, this is a contaminated supplement. I never tested positive or anything, and they agreed and gave him pretty much a suspended 6-month fine, right? Again, we talked about this last week. What would happen if if one of us tested positive for something, whether it's like a protein shake or something like that? What do we know everything that we're taking in? I think the difference here is we're not getting a response for anything, and you're leaving people to just run wild with stories, and that includes media and everyone else. And that's their job, right? And why isn't the commission coming out and saying anything about Dillian Whyte's test? And again, if they knew for 3 days, there had to have been a certain reason that they let this go on. I think that's the issue. And then again, I think the promoter's job is to promote the fight, right? If the commission says, no, you know what, you're good to go, I don't think any promoter in the world is going to say, hold on, I think we should cancel it, right? Unless it's the opposing promoter.
No, but shouldn't you inform the other fighter, though? As a promoter, I want to know. Shouldn't you inform the other fighter, though?
Yeah, but you're a nice guy, Travis. You're a nice guy, Travis. And at this level of boxing, has any promoter been very faithful? It's nothing but he said and she said, right? And again, but even then, but I think that's the commission's job. I don't think that's the promoter's job to inform the other promoter. That's the promoter signed
those two guys. The promoter signed those two guys. He's got a responsibility to take care of the fighters that he signed. And man, if it went to court, Hearn would be as liable as anybody else.
I think it's I think it's the commission's job to oversee everything, right? They're the overseeing. The commission's job is supposed to be completely impartial. We know the promoters have biasness, right? That's why the commission's in place, to have guidelines that everyone follows and everyone's held to the same standard. It's their job to enforce it, right? And again, what you're saying is, I'm not saying any of you guys are incorrect. I'm just saying what the commission's job is to do. Their job is to oversee and make sure everyone follows the same standard. I'm not expecting an opposing promoter to be honest. I'm just not. That's not the way boxing's ever been. It's not going to change now. I do expect the commission, though, to do its job. And if they're not doing their job, I'm wondering what the hell's going on. It's the same thing, when there's been, like when Adonis Stevenson got hurt in the ring and when other fighters got hurt in the ring, where's the commission? Where's the medical staff? That's the commission's job to do these things. And if they're not doing it, then what are they doing? And I think that's the problem here. The UK Anti-Doping Agency declined to comment. They shouldn't be declining to comment. We need to hear a comment from them. We need to hear what their justification was to allow this fight to go on. Because to be honest, if they did that, then maybe all this was bad. If they just said, well, you know what, that he needs to be under whatever whatever he took, it was supposed to be under 0.8 and he came in at 0.81. Then maybe this is just a complete moot point, and then we will all say, okay, fine, and even Oscar Rivas would probably be like, okay, fine. But at this point, that's not what it did, and I think there lies the bigger problem. Why have we not heard from the group that's supposed to be impartial, right? Why we should, to be honest, we shouldn't be hearing from Eddie Hearn first. We shouldn't be hearing from the promoter side first. We should be hearing from the group, the essentially the government, right? The ones who are running this, the ones who are supposed to be managing everything and make sure the fighters are. It is their job to make sure the fighter is safe more than the promoter, I feel. Again, it's not whether it's right or wrong. I'm not saying what's morally correct. I'm saying what people's jobs are doing, and they are not doing their job. I don't understand what the anti-doping panel is doing, and I don't understand what the British Boxing, the Board of Control, is actually doing, because they have not had a response yet. And it's been almost a week now, I believe, or just over a week, and we don't have a response. That itself is an issue. We should not be waiting this long and just be guessing. And again, Dillian Whyte, he has tested positive before. He's been suspended before. And you know what? Like, you know, usually if you fail once, you're going to fail again. But it's not like, it's not like he looked great. It's not like he was in better shape than he's ever been or anything like that. But again, why haven't we heard anything? I think that's a bigger problem. I think the group that's supposed to be impartial, the group that's supposed to be overseeing everything, they can't be the ones who are the most quiet at this point. And I think there lies the bigger problem. So I'm not expecting promoters to be honest about anything. I never have, I never will. I do expect the commission, though, to be upfront and honest, and there lies the issue.
John, where are you on this one?
Well, Riz makes a very good point about the commission, and there should be a process. There should be lines of command in a sense. But I don't know. As a human being, I'm just appalled. And I'm also just disgusted that there's a lack of much interest about the whole thing. And for us who love boxing, love to watch it, Travis's case, loves to compete in it. In our case, Dennis, Riz, we love to write about it. It's so frustrating that it has this corruption around it and this lack of empathy that I don't care who you are. It just proves the old adage that goes back 100 years that things about fighters and other people like promoters and what so-called commissions, it hasn't changed in the sense that they just look at the fighter as a property and a moneymaker. That's all they think about. That's it. So all the garbage about, I really care about him and blah, 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 bullshit. It's not true. And I watched Eddie Hearn answer these questions last night, and he was arguing very strongly about, he was cleared here, he was cleared here, he was going. I'm going, Eddie, I don't care. He's failed one test. I agree with you guys. I understand what Riz is saying, but he seems to me, and this is just my view, a promoter who promotes himself as a guy who cares about the fighters. And just in a sense of fair play, he should have said something. He should have at least said something to Rivas. He probably figured if he said something to Rivas would say, forget it, I'm not fighting. So there was no way he was going to risk it. So it's so frustrating. And it goes back to things we talk about with Teddy Atlas that everybody's going to love hearing. Travis mentioned about Teddy, the whole silence about Manny Pacquiao and Keith Thurman about no testing, and somebody being able to say, no, I'm not going to take a test, and everyone goes, okay, he's not going to take a test. That's just wrong. That can't be. And the fact that nobody says anything.
Yeah.
There's not that much stories about it. What I found really interesting, Dennis, was Deontay Wilder. If this is true with Dillian Whyte, I'm still holding out hope that somehow this is not accurate or sample B. I'm waiting for that. But it doesn't look good because Riz made a really good point about silence usually speaks volumes. They're not saying anything. That's not good. They're probably sitting around trying to figure out how they're going to answer the questions. But Deontay is the only heavyweight who has not tested positive for steroids. Deontay Wilder, and he's the one who was always screaming about steroids in boxing. So it's almost like they want to slay the golden goose. I get that feeling. They're just so reckless that they're willing to risk people's lives, and then when something happens, nobody's going to take any responsibility. They're going to all point fingers like they always do. Oh well, he cleared. he was cleared here. Oh, well, the promoter said it was okay. And the fighters who are trusting of everything, because you have to be. It's like when you have a job, you expect your employer to provide certain situations and a work atmosphere.
A safe working environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You expect that. That's what you expect. What are fighters going to do? What do they got to do now? Question everything? You know, wait. Is that accurate? Do I need to have independent testing done? And then the other thing that I'm jumping all over, but the other thing that I read is that the fighters have to pay for the testing. The fighters have to pay. I don't get that.
Huh.
I don't understand that either.
$30,000
for your testing. Come on, man. How is that right?
Yeah.
You know, and so
right.
this thing is just so screwed up and so disappointing, because boxing in so many ways, it's not called for the sweet science for nothing. We all love it, but it likes to do this to itself because it has human beings, flawed human beings, that are willing to risk. And we've been saying this for years on this show. Like Dennis said in the beginning, what's it going to take? Is it going to take somebody dying, which we had last week, which was devastating, and then the other fighter testing positive for steroids? Is that what it's going to take? And I don't want it to take that. But again, here it is,
coming.
3 or 4 days later.
Yep.
You think so? Yeah, I know. Here it is 3 or 4 days later, and it's cricket. You're not barely hearing anything. We just move on to the next fight. It's so frustrating.
Travis, don't you count on the promoter, the guy who recruited you for this fight to provide, supposedly an even playing field and also look out for your health and welfare in a fight? Don't you put that on him?
Absolutely. And I get it that the promoter of the fighter that you're fighting, you're going to give him every advantage you can. You're going to pick the gloves. You're going to pick the ring. You're going to do all of that. That's fair game to me still.
Yeah, that's fine.
When you as a promoter literally withhold evidence that you have the other guy tested positive, I don't care if that's illegal, immoral, whatever. You lose trust in a promoter, and I kind of trusted as Eddie Hearn as one of the good guys. I think all of us did. We always looked at him as like, oh, you know what? He's kind of different. He's kind of a genius right now when it comes to promoting. He's kind of doing such an amazing job. He's doing all of this. But I think you worked your butt off to be honest and trustworthy, and then you just throw it all away by doing something as simple as all you had to say was, and who knows, Oscar Rivas, I mean, as a fighter, I know that for me as a fighter, I can't tell you guys right now that I would have said no, that I wouldn't fight, but I would want to know. If they came to me, you tell me, then that takes the burden off of you. That takes everything off of you as a promoter. It's just all you had to do was simply sit down and say, hey, guys, Oscar Rivas, hey, it's trace amounts or who knows what it was. But whatever it is, he deserves to know. Whatever you told Dillian Whyte, you owe that to Oscar Rivas, and that's just period. And I honestly do think that is in the scope of a promoter's duty. A promoter can promote all he wants. That's fine. You can't promote and then deceive and lie and call that promoting. That's kind of the environment that we've gotten used to in boxing, and I don't like that. I don't like deception. I don't like lies. I like promoting, but you don't have to lie and deceive others to promote a big and good fight. And I think that's exactly what Eddie Hearn did. He deceived and he lied, and that's not promoting. In my opinion, that is not promoting. Don King did a lot of stuff, which was probably just as shady too, but for the most part, Don King just promoted, and he just built things up bigger than they were supposed to be. But I don't see withholding evidence that a guy tested positive for steroids before he stepped in the ring with the other guy. I don't see that as fair. I don't see that as moral. I don't see that as anybody but to blame but Eddie Hearn, and obviously the commission too. I mean, I think there's blame to go all around, but I think as a promoter too, you're supposed to care about the fighters. The fighters are the ones making you money. When they're alive and well, you make money. If you injure them and get them hurt and put them in situations outside of the scope of boxing, which is steroid-injected guys, then you're not doing your job. As a promoter, as a fighter myself, when I sign on to fight somebody, I sign on to fight somebody with a promoter that I trust. The commission is just kind of like the overseer of it all. I trust that promoter is giving me the right gloves, the right ring, the right everything, and being honest and trustworthy. And I don't think Eddie Hearn is that anymore, and I don't think that you just do this and you get your reputation back. I think this is massive. This is a massive hit on Eddie Hearn, in my opinion. It's going to take me a long, long time to get over this, and obviously I'm still waiting for more information. But as of right now, I think all of you guys are right. The longer time goes by without them saying anything, all that tells me is they're waiting for something else to come up in the news cycle to bury this. That way they can just keep going without commenting at all. And I think that's what's going on. If nothing happens, I think somebody big might pick this story up. Then we might get a little more details, a little more stuff. But right now, it seems shady to me that nobody's saying anything. If there's a right, if there's a wrong, how are you not saying anything? That's not right. It's just not right.
You know, when you don't say anything is when you're huddling with lawyers, when you know you screwed up and you know something big's coming at you, and you just want to talk to all your attorneys first, and they're saying, don't say squat, man. Don't say anything right now till we get it all figured out. This thing, Rivas not knowing, to me, is the smoking gun. I mean, it's all awful, but the fact that if that's true, if Rivas went into this fight without knowing what everybody else knew, man, that puts it over the top. And Riz, I know you're probably champing at the bit. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say real fast, don't you think, you mentioned lawyers, don't you think it's possible that Rivas could be thinking of suing?
Yeah,
I mean,
I would.
Non-disclosure, right? Non-disclosure.
I would.
But he's probably worried that if he does that, who knows what kind of future he might have. See, that's the thing. That's with boxing, with these promoters that are not human in a lot of ways. Who knows? If he does something like that, they all might say, forget it. We're not going to have him fight on our cards.
Yep.
So it's just so bad that it's crazy. Yeah, go ahead, Riz.
Well, I was just saying, it's funny you guys mentioned lawyers because Dillian Whyte, his statement that he put out said, on the advice of my lawyers, I can't say anything. So I don't know why. There's a lot of things to read into that. It could just be, I just hope he doesn't have a steroid lawyer on retainer because how often it happens. I hope that's not the case. What could also happen is maybe he knows of a supplement or something that was the problem, and he told his lawyers, and his lawyer says, "Okay, shut up. We're going to be suing." Like, you know, there's definitely a lot to be guessing here. So it would be. I would say we should let's wait another week, and we'll see what happens. But again, we shouldn't be hearing from Dillian Whyte first. We shouldn't be hearing from the promoter first. The fact that we're not hearing from the anti-doping agency that runs this is embarrassing. Like, I really don't know what their job is. And to be honest, because they haven't responded to anything, I want to have their job because they're clearly getting paid to do nothing. And I think that's something that we all want to do a little more. So I just want to know what exactly they're doing and how they're approaching this, because we shouldn't be hearing from the fighters before we're hearing from the entire agency that runs this thing 5 days after the fact.
Yeah. You know, let me throw this at you guys. And this is for you too, Riz, because you were pretty critical of Canelo Alvarez when he tested positive. But when Canelo tested positive, that was a massive fight. More money got lost in that fight than would have ever gotten lost in this Dillian Whyte fight. But what did they do? He tested positive, and they postponed and canceled the fight. That's exactly what should have happened here. Whether Dillian Whyte is innocent or not, there should be enough time for them to investigate this, postpone the fight if you have to, that there was just plain wrong, and there was no oversight, there was no nothing, the fact that they did this. There's been fights, bigger fights than this, canceled because of a positive steroid test. So they can't make that excuse anymore. They could have easily canceled this or postponed it or did whatever they had to have done. But the protocol was not correct. And it just feels like to me, Riz, you're letting Dillian Whyte off the hook a little bit. And you were very, very staunch critical of Canelo Alvarez when he tested positive. And he actually had it. He actually came out and had an excuse. Dillian Whyte hasn't had nothing, and you're kind of letting him off the hook, and I don't understand why. You're not.
I'm definitely not letting him off the hook. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying the fact that he's not saying anything because his lawyers are not telling him to say anything right now. I think the situation was different in the sense that this was 2 days before the fight. And again, the difference is in the Canelo fight, the commission or who is overseeing the testing came out and said he failed the test, right? So obviously, they had to do something about that. The fact that why isn't the overseeing body here coming out and saying, yes, this fighter failed the test? That's the problem. So, and it seemed like, reading it, and again, maybe I'm wrong, it seemed like Eddie Hearn may have known beforehand. It doesn't seem like Dillian Whyte actually knew beforehand. Or maybe I'm wrong, because they said there was a hearing done, and he was cleared, but they didn't say if the hearing was necessarily done with him, or what. And again, we just need more details at this point. I mean, and to be honest, let's face it, the Canelo one was useless, right? I'm sorry, I still will never take the tainted beef nonsense when that's been happening in that country for 6 years and your trainer is a former butcher. I still don't buy that excuse. I don't think anyone's let off the hook with a positive test. Not anymore, right? I don't think you can play the stupidity card anymore, the ignorance card anymore, especially now where, if you're going to blame the tainted supplements, even then, I don't agree with that. But if you're going to play that card, there are many nutrition companies that swear by Olympic testing, that swear that you will pass all Olympic tests with our supplements, and if you don't, you're guaranteed X amount of money, right? There's a lot of supplements. That wasn't the case 10, 20 years ago when guys were flagged. I'll give you an example, actually. Yoel Romero, UFC fighter, he tested positive for a tainted supplement. He went and challenged in court, and he won something like $20 million in return, right? Because he was taking a supplement that said you will pass every test. And I don't think that's the case with, to be honest, most guys in boxing, and that includes Canelo and Dillian Whyte. I want to hear – the problem is, I think, over here, where we almost got so much feedback from the Canelo thing that we were able to debate and discuss a lot. We haven't heard anything from anyone at this point. The only thing we've heard is Dillian Whyte saying, I can't say anything because of lawyers, and Eddie Hearn just saying, wait for the facts. And here's another thing. How the hell does the WBC not know about this when the commission knew about this? That's a whole other thing, right? It just seems like everyone's playing broken telephone here. But again, to me, the people who have the power to cancel the fight is the commission, first and foremost, right? They're the ones who employ the referees, the judges, and everything else. And I think more than anything else, I mean, look, I'm not going to – promoters are scumbags. I think we already know that, right? Generally speaking. Not Travis. Travis is a good guy. But many
I
promoters –
thought Eddie Hearn was different, though.
He might be better than most, but I mean, he's still part of that same. He's still cut from the same cloth, I feel, right? And again, I mean, you got and look, I'll play devil's advocate here. What's the promoter's job? His job is to still look after his fighter, right? And especially when it's not clear, when because you got to remember when Jarrell Miller tested positive, Eddie Hearn wasn't happy about that. He was very vocal about that, right? So because we don't know anything yet. That's why Eddie Hearn was probably like, okay, well, let's just wait. Because he wasn't saying that when Jarrell Miller tested positive, right? When Miller tested positive, he was angry. He said, I'm so disappointed in this and that. And again, so I don't know why he hasn't said that against Dillian Whyte. Maybe there's something else there. But again, the bottom line is as far as, I don't, to me, this issue is not so much about a fighter testing positive. This issue is about a fight being happening when it shouldn't have happened,
to go on.
right? Exactly. Yeah. And honestly, even if it was a flag, even if it was a tainted supplement, whatever occurs, cancel it, postpone it later, at least maintain the state. I'm sure Rivas would have been pissed that if a fight's being canceled on 3 days' notice. There has to be some sort of setup where even if a fight is canceled for a tainted supplement, the other fighter still gets X amount of money to pay his expenses, right? But there's no setups like that. There's always a problem. But again, none of that. The fact that the fight was able to happen comes down to the commission and the doping agency that allowed it to happen, because they're the ones who have the power to cancel a fight. They're the ones who have the power to say, I don't care if you two want to fight, we are not allowing this to happen. Because their job, first and foremost, is to look after the health and safety of fighters. They're the ones who employ the referees, the judges, all those things. And that's why I go back to, hell, let's look back at Adelaide Bird. We know she's a horrible judge, right? So is it her fault at this point that she's a horrible judge and she keeps getting employed to do these fights? No, it's the commission's job who keeps employing her, right? We have to stop. We have to look at the root cause of problems rather than just looking at the first one to blame. If Dillian Whyte's tested positive over and over and over again, and he's still able to get a fight, again, yes, it's his fault. He's tested
positive.
That's
on the promoter too, right there too.
You're not wrong, but at the same time, the commission is the one that has the power to say no, he's not fighting in this country anymore, and they're not the ones who are doing it, and there lies the problem. And again, Canelo's a moneymaker, obviously. Dillian Whyte's not that big of a moneymaker, right? So and that's what makes it even more curious, with canceling the main event here, would it really deter that much DAZN subscribers or anything like that? I don't think so. And again, the fact that we haven't heard anything at all from a commission and the anti-doping agency, that's the biggest thing that's troubling. It's not the fact. Look, fighters have tested positive before. That hasn't stopped. That won't stop for the future. That'll happen again, I'm sure. But the commission has a responsibility and the ability to cancel it. And you know what? This is also different than it would happen in America, because we've seen, we've seen fights canceled in one state and then put on another state, right? Because the commission operates completely differently, have different testing and all this. Mm-hmm. This is for the entire UK. And it's not like Dillian Whyte is going to go headline a card in Rhode Island or something like that, right? It's not like he's not that big of a name where he can do that. So it's not like the commission is sacrificing power here. It's not like, where Canelo and Golden Boy pretty much ran every show. That's not the case here. They have the power. So if they have the power, why aren't they exercising it, and why are they staying silent? They're the ones who have the ability to cancel fights. They're the ones with the ability to say, no, we want to. They have the ability to do so much, and so why aren't they exercising that power? I don't have, to be honest, I have very low expectations when it comes to promoters. When I hear, the fact that Mayweather Packard took 5 years to make because everything was being spoken to promoters, and then when they met each other after an hour, it was pretty much done. That told me everything. The fact that we hear what Oscar De La Hoya says one day and then what he says the next day, again, you can trust some promoters maybe more than others, but I don't trust them as I would just trust a genuine human being. Essentially, the promoters are not supposed to be the managers, but you can see the overlapping that happens with that, right? The promoter job is so much public relations and so much is spinning it. But again, I'm not going to fault the promoter as much as I'm going to fault the group that has the ability to fully cancel a fight. Because if there's anyone who knows how bad promoters are, it's commissions. And it's not like, and again, if the commission says, no, we're going to cancel it, I don't think Eddie Hearn's going to say, well, we're never going to bring Dillian Whyte and Anthony Joshua back to the UK. I don't think they're going to do that. So if the commission has the power to execute safety, why aren't they doing that? And the commission, to me, has always been at fault for everything, for bad judging, for bad officiating, for bad, for lack of drug testing, for not executing the drug testing. The commission, and this is internationally to me, they're the root cause for all these problems in boxing. And it's about time we address them more, because they are the root cause, right? There's always going to be stupid fighters. There's always going to be fighters who want to take a test. There's always going to be shady promoters. We have to fix the commissions. And it's about time a commissioner or this commission actually responds and says why the hell they allowed a potentially roided up fighter. Again, we still don't know what exactly the details are here. Why they allowed him to get into the ring when another fighter didn't know what was happening, and the sanctioning body for the title didn't know what was happening, and the opposing promoter didn't know what was happening. All that is inexcusable.
Yeah, who else could have canceled this fight is Yvon Michel, if he had known. That's the guy. Mm-hmm. That's Rivas' promoter. That's the guy whose job is to protect Rivas. And if he had been told that the other guy was juiced up, would he or would he not have pulled Oscar Rivas out of this fight? I think he probably would have.
I don't know if that's a guaranteed answer, to be honest, because I think it definitely depends on who the promoter is and who the fighter is.
Fair enough.
Yvon Michel definitely has some mixed opinions in the Canadian and Quebec boxing community. So I'm not going to say for sure he would have or wouldn't have, but I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he ends up canceling that fight.
Okay.
I think there's some trainers who would probably pull the plug more than promoters would, right? I think there's some, if this was Buddy McGirt in the opposite corner, I don't care who that promoter is, Buddy McGirt saying this fight's not happening, right? Yeah. There's trainers who look out for their fighters, I think, more than the promoters, and that's why I think the trainers know what's happening more than promoters, or at least in the sense that they protect their fighter more. I don't think promoters are always interested in protecting their fighter, to be honest, right? I think there's certain promoter-fighter relationships that are different, like Canelo and Oscar, obviously. But I think the trainer would have made sure that fight wouldn't have happened more than Yvon Michel would have made sure that fight wouldn't happen.
Okay, and let me just segue right now, because you guys were knocking around ideas last week about why this PED problem is ongoing and what kind of solutions might stop it in its tracks. And so one of you guys, I think might have been you, Riz, pointed out that Big Baby Miller tested dirty before his fight with Tyson Fury and got a 6-month suspension. Actually, Travis, you were the one, I think, in pro boxing, that's not even a hand slap. What kind of penalties would make PEDs way too risky and to be worth it to a fighter?
Oh, yeah, I already said my example because I think that if you're going to complain about something, you need to come up with a solution as well. My solution is you get a 1-year ban for your first-time offenders. Second-time offenders, it's a lifetime ban, period. And I think it's 100% fair and within the means of keeping fighters safe and letting people know that do not take steroids. One, they're illegal. It's so funny how people think that just because you make something a law, people are going to abide by it. Like, criminals are always going to break the law. And I think that you're a criminal. You have the criminal mindset when you want to cheat to harm another individual in that boxing ring. So I think that they should be strict. I think a 1-year ban is not even enough. Honestly, I'd be okay with a 2-year ban for your first time out. But I know for your second time, you should have a lifetime ban. You don't test positive on accident twice. So if you test positive 2 times, you're done. In my opinion, there is no ifs, ands, buts about it. If you test positive 2 times, you should get a lifetime ban. And I think that would stiffen the people's outlook on everything. I think it would help clean the sport up. I think even the fans would appreciate it. The fans would appreciate seeing 2 true warriors out there, not one juiced-up warrior and one guy who's not juiced up, one guy who follows the rules and one guy who doesn't follow the rules. It's a slippery slope, and I'll make the slope pretty even keel right there. You test positive for the first time, it's 1-year ban.
Something Travis has actually mentioned, he's talking about the ban. Every commission is different. I feel, from what I remember, Dillian Whyte's first ban was actually 2 years. And his second ban would, I think, be 4 years. And perhaps this is why there's a slow response. Maybe that's why they're not just pulling the plug that quickly, because they know, in other commissions, the first sentence is laughable, right? What's a 6-month sentence? It's pretty much non-existent.
Nothing.
So the fact that
Nothing.
I'm wondering that because the UK has historically punished fighters harder and with harsher, is that why maybe they're taking their time here to actually give a response? Because they know that if they do indeed find Dillian Whyte positive and liable again, his career is over. Right? This is not suspend twice, come back, and fight again. His career is done. He is not coming back 4 years later. So I'm thinking, and again, this is all speculative. It is speculative because we don't have a response for anyone. I'm wondering, is that why they're taking their sweet time? Because they understand the massive implications here and the ramifications that if Dillian Whyte is indeed guilty for a second time, he's done. Because the UK historically has actually done a pretty good job with their response with doping and all that. Again, first-time suspension is 2 years. That's actually fair, I think, for most people, right? I think we'd agree with that. Yeah. 2 years is between 2 and 4 fights, something along those lines, between 2 and 6. And that takes money out of a guy's pocket, too. So I think and 4 years is a write-off pretty much at this point, right? So is that maybe why you guys think that maybe that's why we haven't heard anything yet? Because they're really doing their due diligence to find out if Dillian Whyte knew beforehand that he was going to test positive for something? You guys think that's perhaps why?
I mean, as a commission, if they knew 3 days before the fights, they don't get a pass by me. I mean, if they knew 3 days before the fight that he tested positive and they still allowed the fight to go on and didn't tell Rivas, even the commission should have told Rivas. They should have informed both parties. So I don't think the commission gets a free pass on that either because they knew beforehand. So in my opinion, is even if there's some kind of a question mark on his positive test, the commission should have done the right thing and postponed or canceled the fight. The commission dropped the ball, period. No matter what this outcome turns out to be, the commission dropped the ball, period. Because if they want to take their sweet time now, why didn't they take their sweet time beforehand to protect the health of these fighters? That's very laughable to me that they're taking their time now. Why didn't they take their time beforehand, before these guys' lives were at risk, before somebody could have gotten killed in the ring? Somebody can get killed in the ring when both guys are clean, and we've seen that happen last week where 2 fighters died, and as far as I know, nobody tested positive for steroids. So it's already dangerous. The fact that this commission is taking their sweet time now just it kind of pisses me off worse because they could have done that before the fight. If there was even a question mark on his positive test, they should have postponed it. The commission should have postponed it, not even the promoter. And I agree with this one. This is on the commission. The commission should have said, this fight cannot go on until we further investigate this, until we figure out what's going on, because we don't want to take the risk of putting a dirty fighter out there and him harming this other individual, because that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. And who knows what's going to happen now, because this probably is lawsuits just waiting to happen. They're waiting for this commission to come out and say something, and then I bet his team jumps all over that.
This is the Ringside Boxing Show from Monterey, California. I'm Dennis Taylor. We're talking to our expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid. John J. Responti had to leave us. He's not with us anymore. But, hey, you know what? Meanwhile, I think we saw the influence of those two ring deaths, guys, on Saturday night when Jose Luis Ramirez stopped Maurice Hooker in the 6th round. Their junior middleweight title fight, unification fight in Arlington, Texas. This fight was brutal, and it was competitive, and Ramirez landed a big punch and then pounced with a big flurry, and Mark Nelson, the ref, jumped in there in a big hurry and stopped the fight. Hooker was really upset about it at first, as fighters are, you know, people might have been criticizing the ref for intervening too quickly, but Nelson wasn't going to let Hooker get seriously hurt on his watch, I don't think. And to his credit, Hooker saw the light afterwards, and he praised Mark Nelson for stopping the fight when he did. Riz, did you think the fight? Did you get the same impression? Nelson stopped that fight really quickly, probably quicker than he would have under other circumstances.
I don't think so. And to be honest, do you see Hooker's response? He said we had 2 guys dying the last week. I didn't need to be the 3rd. And I think that's what it comes down to. Like, is there a chance that Hooker could recover and come back and win that fight? Yeah, maybe. But there's also a chance he could get seriously hurt, right? I mean,
killed.
Yep. I don't think there's anything wrong with stopping a fight maybe 5% or 10% earlier so a guy can fight another day, rather than the 5 or 10% chance that he is able to go on and come back to win. Because the other 90% of the time means the guy's going to get seriously hurt. And I think that's, and again, I think someone said, the Gamboa fight was, I think funny enough, the Gervonta Davis fight, I think, probably could have went on another few seconds. I still had no problem with Harvey Dock stopping that fight, though. Harvey Dock's an excellent referee who's always done a pretty damn good job. So I don't think, a guy, especially in the last week, I don't think we can be too surprised that there's a couple of early stoppages, right? I think referees, look at the refs, right? The referee themselves have to deal with a lot. I mean, we're talking about how the fighters are dealing with it and all that. I mean, could you imagine the referees from the last 2 fights thinking, could I have stopped this fight at any point? Could I have actually saved this guy at any point? So I don't blame. I'm never going to blame a referee for stopping a fight too early. I mean, if they're, because they're not doing it out of any. I don't think they're doing it out of ill intent. I just think, if a referee makes a mistake, so be it. I just think there was, at that moment, it looked like he was hurt, and it looked like he could have ended really badly. So he stopped the fight, and I think if you're a real professional would understand that, a professional fighter, your job is to fight, and if a referee thinks you're not in a position to defend yourself, then so be it, and I think you have to respect their decision.
And by the way, Teddy Atlas gets very deep into this whole topic later on in this show. The ring deaths and the steroids and all that kind of stuff. Really compelling what he's been saying too. So, Travis, go ahead. Sound like you were going to jump in on this.
Well, I mean, I was just there has been a complaint when referees stopped the fight early. Just ask Julio Cesar Chavez versus oh my gosh, I just forgot his name.
Meldrick Taylor.
Meldrick Taylor, yeah, that stoppage. I think there was a fighter that would actually say a fight was stopped early and complained, and it's that one. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah, that was Richard Steele. Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, so before we wrap this up, Ramirez is now 25-0, 17 knockouts. He's waiting to fight the winner of the WBSS 140-pound finale between Josh Taylor and Regis Prograis. 3 undefeated guys at the top of this weight division is really intriguing. How's this all shake out? Taylor, Ramirez, Prograis. Who do you guys like in that group?
Yeah, I think Prograis has to probably stand out a little bit, but Ramirez keeps getting the job done. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's kind of what you can say about him. He's getting the job done, and he's beating good people. So I think it's hot. It's a hot division. I want to see all of those guys fight each other. Let's have a round robin. Both three of them fight each other in a round robin tournament. I think the fans would love something like that.
Okay, and go ahead, Rich.
I just think it's, Prograis to me has always kind of stood out. His worst performances are still better than most other guys' best performances in some ways. I mean, that was probably Ramirez's best performance last night. Prograis is a good fighter. He's not a great fighter. But we look at Prograis as the great fighter. He hasn't really had any hiccups at really any point, and he is in his prime in every way. That being said, Josh Taylor is a really solid fighter. Josh Taylor has so much potential, and I'm just wondering if it's a step up maybe a little too early for him. Prograis 30, he's right in his physical prime. Josh Taylor's 28, also right in his physical prime. I just think it's a slightly bigger step up. I mean, Bradchick and Ryan Martin, Postel, those are Josh Taylor's last three opponents, all really solid. So I just think the Prograis has just actually the big fight that really showed off anything to me was the Ndongo fight. Ndongo was coming off a Terrence Crawford loss, and people are like, "Oh wow, Terrence Crawford looked great," and somehow Prograis one-upped him by doing a 1 round earlier. That said a lot to me. Prograis is something special, and I think he could be the new king at a suddenly stacked 140-pound division.
Hey, and Riz, you also were impressed last night with Yorkas Gamboa. This is a guy who was a two-division world champ. He's 30-2 right now, 18 knockouts. 6 years ago, people were giving him pound-for-pound consideration, and his career kind of flattened out, and he never became great. Now he's 37. But last night, somehow, he looked young again, and he knocked out Roman Martinez in the 8th round, and now he wants Gervonta Davis, who's 22-0 with 21 knockouts, and obliterated Ricardo Nunez in the 2nd round. What do you make of all that?
You know what? I think, we talked about this actually before. Gamboa has a unique skill set, and, against Gervonta Davis, it will be a tough fight. But after last night, I want to see that fight more than ever, because even though Gervonta Davis should still win, Gamboa will definitely provide a test that he hasn't seen before.
Okay. All right. These guys are our expert analysts. Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, John J. Responte are part of this show every week, and they always give you the bottom line, man. Great conversation today, guys. I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy this one. So thanks, gentlemen. You guys have a great week.
Thanks, guys.
All right. And John Responte is going to be back in a couple of minutes for a truly incredible interview with Teddy Atlas. Pop some popcorn for this one. But first we're going to hear from our great British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin, who is coming up after this very short break.
You're listening to the Ringside Boxing Show, the hottest, sweatiest show on West Coast Radio.
Hi, I'm Dennis Taylor, host of the Ringside Boxing Show, where since 2008 we have been continuously sponsored by Garcia Boxing, the first family of the Sweet Science on California's beautiful Central Coast. Trainers Max and Sam Garcia and ring strategist Dean Hamilton are regarded among the most knowledgeable in the game. And Kathy Garcia, who manages all Garcia boxing fighters, is renowned for her integrity and career guidance, having taken 2 boxers to #1 world rankings. Together they comprise one of the most respected teams in the sport. Learn more by calling 831-261-3214 or send them an email at garciaboxing25@aol.com.
Hi there, it's Paul McLaughlin with your weekly roundup of everything going on in the UK boxing scene at the moment. Well, Dillian Whyte says that he defeated Oscar Rivas fair and square amid allegations about a positive drug test. Promoter Eddie Hearn had previously said Whyte was cleared to fight in a response to reports that the heavyweight had allegedly tested positive for a banned substance. Hearn tweeted, "Further to reports, I can confirm that both Dillian Whyte and Oscar Rivas were subject to extensive doping testing for their bout. Both fighters were cleared to fight by both bodies and the British Boxing Board of Control." The WBC issued a statement on Thursday that said, "At the time of the publication of this release, the WBC has not received any notification from anyone about a positive anti-doping test allegedly yielded by Dillian Whyte in connection with last Saturday's fight against Oscar Rivas for the WBC Interim Heavyweight Championship. Deontay Wilder, though, who is wrapping up his UK tour at the moment, had his say on things.
It's a shame of what they have done in the order they've done it. You know, it's been reported that they have more than one substance in their body. In fact, it was reported that they didn't notify the WBC nor Oscar Rivas camp that Dillian Whyte was on it. It was reported that they knew 3 days prior to the fight that he had that in his system, and they continued to let him fight. You know, and it's just sad, man. And this guy has been crying, talking about 600 days. He ain't been the mandatory, and he finally get the opportunity. When he had 4 opportunities before, but he got an official opportunity this time to do it. And what did he do? Shame on you.
Elsewhere, Luke Campbell can stake his claim to being the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world if he defeats the best of the best, Vasily Lomachenko. That's the words of promoter Eddie Hearn. Campbell challenges Lomachenko for the WBA, WBO and Ring Magazine lightweight titles, while the vacant WBC belt will also be up for grabs when they clash at the O2 Arena in London on August the 31st. Hearn has said that bringing the 3-weight world champion to the UK is great for British boxing, but also for Campbell, because he feels the 31-year-old can defeat his fellow Olympic champion on home soil. However, a lot of other people believe it's a step too far for Campbell. So what does Luke have to say about it himself?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's entitled to an opinion, but, you know, if I listened to their opinions, I'd never be where I am today. So it's, I guess that's the downfall on social media. Everybody's got an opinion, you know, whether you want to hear it or not. But listen, they can say what they want. They don't do what I do. They don't get up in the morning, work hard in the gym, day in, day out, and dedicate myself to this. So I believe in myself, and, you know, I'm not interested in what other people have to say.
Well, we will see when that fight happens. And finally, Callum Smith, arguably Britain's best pound-for-pound number 1 fighter, isn't bothered who he defends his world super middleweight title against next, as long as the fighter brings out the best in him. Rumours are abounding that Smith has ducked Billy Joe Saunders. However, Eddie Hearn claims the fight was financially unviable. So, will he face Canelo next then? Maybe there is one man who could have asked him, and that is UK taxi driver Kevin, who had the pleasure of meeting Callum Smith in his cab, much to his delight.
I've just met the legend. He's just been in my cab, Callum Smith. You know, people say to me, if you'd had famous in my cab, I've just had the legend, the world champion boxer of Liverpool, Callum Smith, one of the Smith brothers. Really nice fella, you know what I mean? Really down to earth, nice fella, and he had a lovely smile, you know what I mean? And normally when you get people famous and that, you don't want to know. Callum had a really decent conversation with him, so, you know, big shout out to you, Callum. What a really nice fella you are, and keep up the good work with the boxing, mate, you and your brothers. All my love, Kev's Cab. How mad's that? And I'm not name dropping, by the way. I wouldn't do that, you know what I'm like. You've got to give credit where it's due. What a really nice fella. And people about this, you know, cabbie drivers, and, you know, when they say, have you had someone famous in? Callum, really nice fella. You know what? Good on you, Callum. Love you, bro. Take care. And Kev's Cab. I know the mood.
Fair to say Kev enjoyed that taxi ride. Right, that's your lot from me, guys. I'll be back next week with more boxing news. In the meantime, gloves up and protect yourselves at all times. Back to the studio.
Man, great stuff, Paul. Paul McLaughlin, our man in England. Thank you very much. Teddy Atlas is going to rock the Ringside Boxing Show after one more very quick message. Do not go away. We are not kidding about that.
I'm Dennis Taylor, co-author of the Amazon bestseller Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy. You know, writing this book was a labor of love for John J. Responti and myself. We enjoyed every minute of the process and considered it a privilege to tell the tale of one of the most electrifying boxing trilogies in the history of this sport. Intimate Warfare traces the collision course of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward from their earliest days through their 3 epic fights, as well as the aftermath of this great rivalry, which culminated in one of the greatest friendships in boxing. Intimate Warfare has received a 4.5-star rating from readers and was endorsed by Hall of Famers Harold Letterman and Joe Cortez and 2-time Trainer of the Year Virgil Hunter. Our foreword was written by Ray Boom Boom Mancini, another one of the greatest blood and guts fighters of our time. Get your copy today at Amazon.com.
This is tremendous, Don, just tremendous. The atmosphere heavy, uncertain, overtones of ugliness. A reminder in a way of how it was in March of 1964 at Miami Beach, when Clay met Liston for the first time and nobody was certain how it would turn out. The crowd is tense. They've been here since 10 this morning.
Welcome back to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor with John J. Responti, and today's featured guest is a member of the International Boxing Hall of Fame's class of 2019, an honor that was bestowed upon him as a broadcaster, most notably a ringside analyst for ESPN's Friday Night Fights for 18 years, and he's still with that network after 22 years. But Teddy Atlas also is recognized as one of the top boxing trainers of his era, having worked with Mike Tyson, Michael Moore, Wilfred Benitez, Shannon Briggs, Simon Brown, Joey Gamache, Donnie Lalonde, Barry McGuigan, Timothy Bradley. The list goes on. He's also had a very colorful life and career, which you can read about in his terrific autobiography. It's called Atlas, From the Streets to the Ring, A Son's Struggle to Become a Man. And we're very excited today to welcome Teddy Atlas to the Ringside Boxing Show. Teddy, thanks for joining us today. How are you, sir?
Good, guys. Thank you for the nice introduction. I also have a podcast that's doing pretty good. If you go on YouTube and you put in The Fight with Teddy Atlas, that's about as sophisticated as I get. I don't understand how that internet stuff works too well, but I'm on it, and we're doing pretty good. A lot of people are supporting us, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
Great.
Outstanding, man. Hey, I think one of the reasons you're in the Hall of Fame as a broadcaster is that you never hesitate to give your honest opinion on a topic, and we wanted to get your perspective, first of all, on what happened this past week to Maxime Dadashev, who was 28, and Hugo Santillan, who was just 23. Both these guys died from injuries they received in their ring over the previous weekend. In Dadashev's case, there's been a lot of finger-pointing and second-guessing since that fight, and people have been critical of the Boxing Commission in Maryland and the ring doctor and the ref, and, of course, Maxime's highly respected trainer, Buddy McGirt. Tim Bradley, who was ringside that night, wondered why Dadashev was being permitted to walk to his dressing room after the fight, and he didn't quite make it there. From what you know about the incident, does it sound like some serious mistakes were made that night, or is that all 20/20 hindsight?
I'm not going to point any fingers. I wasn't there. It's a tragedy. It's a terrible tragedy. It's just like if a football player doesn't make it off a football field, or a race car driver doesn't get off a track, a boxer doesn't leave the ring. I've said it for like 20-plus years, doing broadcasts, having the privilege to do broadcasts, the privilege that the fans allow me to and listen to me, and give me that opportunity. I've always tried to use it as a forum when I can, instead of just only a job, but an opportunity to say things when I thought they needed to be said in this business. There is no national commission. There is no real oversight. Each commission is omnipotent. They're all different in different states, and they have relationships sometimes with the people that making money in the business, and that's never good. So, the business side is difficult, the administrative side too. And, I've always said over the years that fighters go in the ring and they come out with less of themselves. And it's true. And they understand the risk, and it's terrible, beyond terrible, when you see what we saw in the last couple of weeks with two members of our boxing family going down this way, passing away after fighting in the ring. You don't know all the circumstances. it's so difficult. I mean, I remember years ago, Cus Tyson, I was fortunate enough to be mentored by him, and he was dedicated only to one thing, to the sport of boxing, nothing else. He didn't even get married because he said, how could I get married? It wouldn't be fair. I wouldn't be able to give myself properly to somebody else the way I'm involved in this business, in this sport. Not too many people would do that or have the thoughts like that. Yeah. But, you know, he was what he was. And I remember he used to look into these terrible, you know, tragedies when they would come about. And for example, I remember once there was a kid in the Junior Olympics, horrible, oh my God, 13 years old in Virginia, if I remember correctly. And I'm going back 35 years, 40 years. And he was boxing in the Junior Olympics, and they had just started, I believe, making it optional, I think, if my memory serves me, if you could wear a headgear. Because in those days, the amateurs didn't wear headgears. So I think it was just becoming optional. If I remember correctly, this kid was a real good little boxer, 13 years old. He won the outstanding boxer of the tournament, and he wasn't wearing a headgear. And, oh, God, he passed away after the fight. And it was a non-eventful fight. I remember reading about it, and Cus made me read about it. And it was, you know, they said it was a nondescript fight. There was no real, I mean, the kid was a real good boxer. He wasn't getting hit, and, you know, to any degree. And then this happens. And then Cus did some investigating. It turned out that the kid had been lifting some weights. He lived with a single mom, and he had been lifting some weights, 13-year-old kid, down in his basement prior to the tournament, maybe a day or two before, a couple of days before, and they collapsed. And when his mom came down, he was unconscious. And, you know, it turned out that obviously a mom it's very difficult. She sees he's okay, comes to. The kid says, no, I don't want to go to the doctor, you know. So they go through. 2 days later, he fights in the tournament. And again, you probably, listen, this is difficult. This is tough to venture into these areas. Yes, I get it. But you probably don't have to be a neurologist to figure out that something was going on from that point on. And then he gets in this tournament, and as everyone says, he outboxes everybody. He doesn't take punishment, and yet he gets a cerebral hemorrhage, and he passes away. So there's so many, oh my goodness, there's so many different dimensions and parts to these terrible tragedies. As Cus would say, sometimes it's it's a previous undisclosed injury, and or it could be a fight before. Remember the fight, years ago they did a documentary on it, with Benny Kid Paret and Emil Griffin, and everybody wanted to blame. And I think this speaks to your point right now, well, people pointing fingers and all. And I'm going to use this example. Everybody wanted to blame the referee, and it was a good referee. And they said, he allowed Emil Griffin to hold Paret behind the head while he hit him with uppercuts in one of the corners, and he didn't see it. He wasn't in position. He didn't stop it, and by the head not being allowed to give naturally, the punches had more impact, and that caused that caused this fatality, or led to it, or had added to the possibility of what happened, and everybody was quick to and eager to jump on that because it was there. It was said by somebody. You could see that it happened, and as Cus said, what they didn't look at was that Paret had been in a terribly difficult fight where he got stopped, I believe, 3 months earlier to a real big, strong world champion named Gene Foreman. Just a strong, like they say, country strong. Just a strong physical guy who was really a middleweight fighting a welterweight, and he took a beating in that fight. And then he goes in with a great Emil Griffin, and he has this fight, and he has this situation where he passes. So again, so quick to point fingers and say, "Oh, the referee," in that fight. Well, there's a real good chance. Again, I'm not being a doctor, but there's a real good chance that something happened, 2 months earlier, 3 months earlier, I don't know the exact timeline, in that fight where, for all accounts and purposes, he took a beating. And he, back in those days, they went on and fought quickly. Even today, sometimes they fight too quickly. And again, if you want to put any, I can't put any blame. All I can say is it's a tragedy. It's a difficult sport. It's a great sport. But it's any sport where two men can get in the ring, can climb those steps, leave that locker room, walk that feels like it's 2 miles, knowing where they're going, and get in there and be able to face all their inhibitions, all their doubts, all their weaknesses, all their fears, and get it and lay it on the line. Find out who's the best. Find out how good you can be. Find out sometimes who you are, where you can go. Let people outside, all the movie stars, watch and wonder if they maybe someday can learn something from watching. That's why they're all drawn to it. That's why all the pretty people come out, so they can see these special men, these noble warriors, and they can wonder, maybe it'll touch me. Maybe I can be better. Maybe I can be stronger. Maybe I can make the choices that these men make, that I don't make in my life. Maybe I'll be touched by this. To have that kind of sport. And then on top of it, wherever you come from, no matter what your history, no matter what your backdrop, no matter who your parents are, no matter how difficult life might have been, no matter how unfair life might have been, on one given night, if you're determined enough, if you're prepared enough, if you're trained well enough, if you're ready, you can have your hand raised. You can even the platform, even the playing field for everything in your life. You can have your hand raised and be called champion of the world and make everything right. Make everything right. And that's a special place. That's a special sport. But it comes with its difficulties. It comes, like football and the other sports I mentioned, it does not come free of danger, and it's terrible to see these things. The only thing I would add to what I've said, and I think I've said enough, is, and I try to say things that are pertinent to the degree that I'm capable of that, I hope, that matter, not just moving your gums around, but something that maybe can matter, that can be relative to what we're saying. And the only thing I would add is, damn, I wish we had a national commission. I'm not saying that this would have been avoided. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying that all the other sports have it. They have an eye on the sport. And when they put rules in place, they're enforced. They're not played games with like it is in our sport, because you have relationships with the organization or with the commission or with the promoter or whatever. And I would like to see medical standards across the board. And again, I know nothing except we have a tragedy here. That's all I know. And I know it's a difficult sport. We all know that. You don't need Teddy Atlas to tell you that. But I wish that there was just unilateral conformity across the board in this business, like there is in other businesses of athletics, where, for example, you get knocked out. Usually most states will say, oh, you got to get a CAT scan. All right, makes sense. You got to get a CAT scan. Not all of them, though. Not all of them. But most of the bigger ones, you got to get a new CAT scan. Well, what about if you didn't get knocked out, but you took a bad beating? You took a bad beating. What about then? You don't have to get a CAT scan? Really? Or how about being where you monitor the difference in the CAT scans? You get a CAT scan 1 year, okay, you're doing okay, you haven't been knocked out, thank God. And you go on, and then maybe every 2 years, let's just say, I'm just throwing a arbitrary number out there, but every 2 years, even though nothing dramatic has happened, you have to get another one. Why? To compare it. See if there's a change. And things like that. Now we're talking. Now we're talking. We're not just freaking, just hearing ourselves talk. We're talking about something that can matter, that can make a difference. So that's what. And it's a sad day. It's a very difficult time right now to be talking about these things.
Teddy, you've spent most of your adult life working the corner for fighters. Stopping a fight has to be the most gut-wrenching decision for a trainer, especially if your fighter is pleading with you not to do it, like Maxime was with Buddy. What's that moment like for you as the person who holds another man's health and welfare in your hands? And what are your thoughts today about Buddy, who probably cannot help but wonder if he made a horrific mistake? That's human nature.
I don't see anything that Buddy really did wrong. Listen, I can speak for myself, but it's difficult because then it sounds like you're being, critical of, because what you would have done is different. That doesn't make him wrong.
Right.
That doesn't make him wrong. It's a decisive business, right? That's all I can say, right? I think that answers the way where I'm coming from. It's a decisive business, it's played by the moments are very decisive moments. They're usually, not a lot of debating going on about a moment in boxing. It's black and white, It's you're on the attack, you're on the defense, you're getting hit, you're not getting hit. I mean, it's pretty, clear cut, and you got to be pretty clear cut when you approach it to your decision making as a fighter, and of course, as the guy who's going to be helping a fighter and obviously navigating a fighter, coaching a fighter. But again, Buddy knows his fighter. I don't know his fighter. I don't know him. Buddy's a terrific person. Buddy was a terrific fighter. That's why he's in the Hall of Fame. And he understands better than most people in this business what a fighter goes through. Because of his perspective, being a former fighter at the level that he was on top of it. So, he's making judgments based on the fighter he knows, based on the business he understands, the sport that he understands, the difficulties he understands within that ring, within that sport. He's coming. That's why he's hired. He's hired because of the fighter he was. He's hired because of that perspective. That's why somebody trusts him and puts him in that position. So I'm not going to doubt that from Buddy, because I know that it's coming from the places I just said. I know that there's a lot of dimension to that. There's a lot of thought to that. There's a lot of information that he's processing because of where he's coming from, because he knows the fighter, because he fought, because he's been in situations where he's been hurt in fights, where he's had to fight through it and find a way. So I'm not going to question his judgment. I'm just going to, I know, I just know that it's a terrible situation right now, and you can always argue it, the subjectivity of the things that there is subjectivity involved in. You can always argue it different ways. Buddy, I'm sure felt the reason he's asking him is because he is a fighter, right? So in his mind, I'm sure he's given respect, knowing how he felt. So I'm sure that he already had his mind up that he's stopping it, because he showed that at the end. He asked, but what did he do? He didn't listen. He stopped it. Because if he listened, he wouldn't have stopped it. So I think part of the criticism that he's getting taken here, Buddy, is that he was doing what a fighter does to another fighter, giving him that respect that, hey, let me stop, but at the same time knowing that he was going to stop it. So it's, that's the way knowing Buddy, knowing this business the way I do, knowing where Buddy's coming from, knowing that he was a former fighter, former world champion, I think that's attached to it. But at the same time, his intent, his decision was the right one.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
Look, I mean,
it's
so difficult.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it is.
No, guys, it's just so difficult. I remember training in Gleason's gym back 40. Oh my goodness, old Gleason's gym, the real Gleason, the one I was in at least. Of course, you're going to say the one you're in is the real one. Everything else. So we wouldn't be humans if we couldn't do that. So, but this was in Manhattan, on 31st Street, 30th and 31st Street, between 7th and 8th Avenue, closer to 8th, and 2 blocks from Madison Square Garden. Boy, what a time! You train your fighters, then you walk over to the Garden. You train your fighters during the day, you walk over to the Garden or to the Fall Forum. The small arena, and you fight. How many times I did that? Oh, I can't even count. And I remember there was a fighter, I don't know if you guys remember, but he was a strong guy. He was around during a difficult time, during one of the greatest fighters of all time was around in the middleweights, Marvin Hagler. This guy's name was Wilfred Scipion. I knew him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, matter of fact, they had talked about me training him at the time, but I didn't, because my friend Mike Jones was involved with him. God bless him. And so he's training there, and he had a fight coming up in the Garden with Willie Clausen. And, if my memory serves me correct, so he fights him. And, again, nothing to really say, oh, gee, should have stopped it, or gee, this, But afterwards, again, just terrible, Clausen passes away. And again, I remember Cus having, I was gone from Cus's by then, but I remember that he had, again, done some checking. And, of course, it was, terrible situation, big headlines of that, especially in New York, Madison Square Garden, on top of it, as far as the news being highlighted about what happened. And then there's like a little tiny article which Cus was upset about because it wasn't put in the way that the other article was. And he, apparently, Willie Clausen, had a situation of a few days before that where somebody witnessed that somewhere around the Garden, he was out at night and he got into some kind of melee situation and he got hit with a pipe. And again, I don't know if he went to the emergency room and that's how the story was reported, but he got hit with a pipe. He was unconscious from what I gathered from the story. And of course he fought 2 days later and this happened. So again, there's so many things we don't know, guys, and all we do know is, it's a tough sport. Yeah, it is. It is. And we do know that it can be dangerous. Yeah, we know that. And we cry when this happens. But the fighters also understand it too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, also this week, Teddy, Dillian Whyte.
I want to say one other thing. Can I, guys?
Yeah, please.
It's all right?
Sure.
It just hit me. I don't know. I'm defending the sport, and I'm trying not to do that. I don't know. It's like a natural impulse, but
sure.
Because I want to defend Because when I'm defending the sport, I'm defending the fighters, and because I know what the sport does for fighters. I know how many it saves. And I'm just going to tell this short story. I was with a guy. I run a charity foundation for 22 years now, the Dr. Alice Foundation. We help people that fall through the cracks sometimes, and they don't get helped unless some foundation like us maybe helps. There's a lot of great foundations. We're just one of them, one of the many. We are no better than anyone else. But we do concentrate on, a lot of single mom families, low-income families that are struggling, and they might not have the proper insurance, so we step in and we make sure that they get the proper treatment. We pay for it, or we fly them out of state if they need to, or we put the handicap ramp up, or we'll put a handicap bathroom into the place, into the apartment where a single mom would never be able to do that. And so I remember and we run a lot of social programs to help a lot of kids in a lot of these at-risk schools. So I was trying to, and I hate this part of it, but I was trying to solicit some guy some years ago. Somebody talked me into going to a meeting, some big shot guy that was a politician, and running, he was trying to become mayor or something, and he had a lot of money, and they said, let's set up a meeting, see if he can help the foundation. I have to do those things sometimes. You hate to do that. So, but you have to. So I was in the middle of this meeting, and I'm telling them about these boxing programs that we were running at the time, and they were costing the foundation about $100,000 a year. I had 3 gyms, one in Brooklyn, 2 in Staten Island, and we paid for everything. We paid for the coaches, we paid for everything, and that's about what it cost us. There was no cost to the kids. And my rules were that you had to bring a report card to get in free. So I wanted you in school, obviously. You had to pull your pants up. You couldn't be hanging your pants down. We made that a rule. Respect yourself, even if you don't think you're not respecting yourself. We'll explain to you how you're not, and respect other people. And the third rule was I decided to put a computer, just a computer. It was very easy. Matter of fact, full disclosure, somebody donated them. And put a computer in a little room that wasn't being used, and hire a certified teacher to be there 5 days a week, and make sure the kids go into that room once a week, see how they're doing at school. That's it. It's pretty simple. And listen, the sport by itself would save kids. People ask me, how, Teddy? How's it just save kids? Well, it gave them a reason to care about themselves. Is that good enough? Right there. Bang. A lot of these kids had no reason to care about themselves or think good of them. And boxing let them think good of themselves. And when you think better of yourself, you perform better. You behave better. You make better choices. So I'm up there with this freaking guy. It pisses me off to even repeat it. But, I want to make a point. And I'm trying to lobby him for money. First thing out of his mouth, as soon as he hears me talk about all the things, he says, what do I want to... Oh, that's brain damage. These kids ain't going to be no better anyway. They're coming from places they're coming from. They're going to make the choices they may. I said, you're wrong. You're not listening to me. Do you understand what I just told you? These kids are changed by this, because it gives them the capacity. Well, they don't care about other people. I said, no. You're missing the whole point. They don't care about themselves. This will give them a reason to care about themselves. You come second, then they can care about you. You ain't first. They're first. I wanted to say, you moron, but, I left that part out because my guy said, Teddy, please give it a shot. So I'm trying my best. And it's getting hard. And then he says, I'm gonna give money, $100,000 a year to to support people punching each other in the head. I said, no, they're actually taught to avoid punches and give brain damage. So I couldn't take it no more. So I said, let me tell you something, okay, buddy? I have a kid. I'm not going to say his name right now, but I said his name then. I said, I have a kid, 15 years old, was drinking a bottle of vodka a day, hanging out with gangbangers, got thrown out of his family. Good family. It happens. Tough area. Good family. It happens. Got thrown out, living on the streets with these gangbangers, drinking a bottle of vodka a day. You think that causes brain damage? He didn't. He just got quiet. I said, what do you think causes more brain damage? That or getting hit with a jab? What do you think, buddy? Then I walked out of the place because I thought I wasn't getting a dime. So that's.
That sounds like a TKO.
It's important to say that.
Point. You made your point.
Yeah, a lot of good it did me.
Well, I think you did the right thing, actually, in my view. You know, I got to ask you about this, though, Teddy, even though I don't want to, because I don't like this subject. I don't think any of us that love boxing do, because it's another difficult thing that's going on right now, and I think you probably have already figured out where I'm going. It's with Dillian Whyte, tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs yesterday. Now, we haven't got the sample B yet back, so I'm going to hope that maybe there's a mistake here, but regardless, this is really starting to seem like an epidemic in boxing. Do you think it is?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I think we don't even see it. Usually, what's that old saying? It's the tip of the iceberg. I don't think we even see the tip. Yeah, I do. Hey, what other sport do you have that that's this dangerous, that demands that you know what's in somebody's veins? I mean, you got baseball, football. I mean, baseball, what are you going to do, beat up the baseball a little bit more because something's in your vein? All right, okay, I don't want to beat up baseballs. But, yeah, I mean, really, let's talk real here. That's what's going to happen, right? And so you shouldn't have something that gives you an unfair advantage in PEDs going through your veins. So they crack down on it. Good, beautiful, great, proper, right. And listen, I'll go further. You could throw the ball harder and maybe you hit somebody in the head. So I'm not joking around about it, about just beating up the baseball. I get it. But it is really, it shrinks in comparison. My God. To what you're talking about in my sport, in our sport, where you put something in your veins and now you're going to hit somebody in the head harder than you should be allowed to, than you were meant to by nature. Well, so it shouldn't even be a conversation, a debate of anything. It should just be that there's testing, period. But what other sport have you ever heard of, like in the last fight with Canelo and Pacquiao, a huge fight, where somebody could say, I'm not testing. No, I'm not testing. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, just think of Tom Brady in football. I don't feel like testing. Nah. I'm not going to, you know what? I'm not going to do any testing. I don't want to do it for this game. Maybe I'll do it next season. Catch me next year at the early part of this season. Maybe I'll submit to it, but I'm not doing it. Or any of the other stars in the sport of football could say that. You can't say that. Why? Because there was a national commission. There was a commission with power in place that makes you that puts laws and rules in place and makes you conform and makes everyone conform. It's a joke. Why even have it in boxing if you can say no to it? If everyone's not forced to submit to it, why? So, God, it's a problem. It's a problem. And again, it goes right back to the lack of infrastructure, the lack of so many of these things in this sport to have these things in place, to have real policing. We're still the Wild West. Really, I hate to say it, it's my sport. Put my whole life into it. But you got to be honest about it. and it's terrible. And I'm disappointed in hearing this. I'd like to get all the evidence first before I really go out there anymore, and I will. But I have a podcast that's doing really good, and people are supporting it. And, I mean, we're getting 200,000 views on our podcast, 100,000 views on our podcast. And I don't know nothing about that stuff. I just know it sounds pretty good. And, you know, people say, Teddy, we're doing pretty good. I said, yeah, I don't know. I don't even know how to find the damn thing. But I'm glad people are listening, and I take it serious, the responsibility to say what needs to be said. So I went to bat for Dillian Whyte a few weeks ago on one of my podcasts. I tore apart the WBC, allowing him to be a mandatory for 600 days. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Then what's the sense of having a rule of a mandatory if you can hold a guy out there for 600 days when it's supposed to be 9 months? And so I went after the WBC in a way that I felt I needed to, and I stood to go to defend this fighter that wasn't being treated properly. And so it's difficult then, you know, in the midst of all that, I want to see if it's true. I want to see what all the evidence is. But it's, you know, it's disappointing to hear that, you know.
Sure is.
But again, the sport is a sport that begs for difficulty. I hate to say it. And I'm talking about the business side of it, not the sporting side of it. The business side with the lack of, you know, having anything in place for proper oversight. It just begs to be corrupted. It begs to be, you know, to breed incompetence, to allow things to go left and right and sideways and up and down, because there is no, again, there's no unilateral conformity to rules of, you know, there's nobody to enforce them. I mean, you have organizations out there that have been, the guys that run them have been caught on film taking money to rate fighters. And you're going to say, well, we're in good hands. No, don't worry. They got rules. Really? Really?
Yeah.
They should be apprentice lawyers while they're in prison doing their time.
Yeah.
That's what they should be. They should be learning these rules, learning how to be good at it while they're serving their time. And then when they get out, maybe they could do something good.
Yeah.
Nowhere else. You can't make this stuff up. You can't make it up.
It's true. It's very true.
And then I'm the bad guy.
Teddy.
And then somebody don't want me on the air because I'm going to say something. But, you know, what are you going to do? You make your choices. You know, but what are you going to do? But I tell you one thing, it's a nice thing when you do get your human and you do sometimes say, what's the use? You do, you're human. But then you can't say it for more than maybe 30 seconds because then you get trapped. But you do, for 30 seconds, what the frick is the use? What good is it? And then 30 seconds later, you know the answer, and you say, shut up. Shut the frick up. And see if you can do something, you freaking idiot. And, you know, and the one thing that, for me, always at the right time, I've been fortunate, like some fan will come up to me somewhere, going to an airport, coming out of a deli, and just say, thanks, Ted. Thanks. I say, I don't do nothing. Yeah, you do. You say, yeah, well, it hasn't changed nothing. Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for saying it. And, you know, it reminds you real quick. It kicks you in the ass real quick that, hey, don't ever think it don't matter to everybody. Don't ever do that to people. Don't ever paint everybody with that brush. Don't ever do that.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, do you think that people should be suspicious of Pacquiao's victory over Thurman since there was no VADA test before the fight? I know that's what you mentioned a little while ago. doesn't that cause a little? Shouldn't there be a little cloud over the whole Pacquiao thing?
Any other sport there would be, or any, but you. I love Pacquiao. He's special. There's no getting around it.
Yep.
There's no getting around it. So those Pacquiao maniacs out there that are loading their bow and arrow right now as I speak, with a T on the with a teddy on the tip of their razor arrow. Hold off a second, will you, buddies? Guys, hold on for 2 seconds. All right? He's special.
Yes,
no matter what. You have to have the grit, the determination at 40 years old, to have the determination, the grit, the toughness, the mental fortitude, the timing, the ability to throw punches at the right time, the nerve to throw them at the right time, the ability to move your legs at the right time, to execute, to do that with a younger guy, a big guy, a strong guy. Yeah, a guy who was inactive, I think it hurt him a little bit, but still, to go and do that at that level, wow, the guy's special.
Yep.
But to answer your question fairly and not to dodge the thing, I mean, any other business, any other sport that, you would ask that question, but one of the symptoms of boxing, one of the bad symptoms that goes along with everything we're talking about, is that after a while, people get numb. I think the most disgusting part of it is when people say, and you've heard it, where people will say, oh, what do you expect? That nothing infuriates me more. Nothing infuriates me. What do you mean, what do you expect? Did you really say that? Did you really say that? Oh, what do you expect? It's boxing. What do you expect? That's infuriating. And I think that there's symptoms of that, unfortunately, that people get numb, that after a while it's like, well, what are you going to do? Why even talk about it? Why even think about it? Why? Because you should. Because it's important. Because you have a responsibility to not stop caring, to not stop thinking of things that deserve to be thought of and considered and understood. You have a responsibility. So, but we forget. And again, I get it. That cloud you talk about, it's a shadow more than a cloud. And it hides things. It blocks things out. It makes you, forget that there's a sun up above.
Teddy Atlas.
You think it's supposed to be shady all the time. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not. So, all you need to know, and all you Pacquiao guys that are ready again to let that bow and arrow, let that arrow fly, when your own guy says, I'm not submitting to testing, what does that tell you? I didn't say it. You didn't say it. Your partner didn't say it. What does that tell you when he said, I don't want testing? That doesn't make you think a little bit?
Yeah.
A little bit? And I'll finish it again. What sport allows it to be said? What sport allows that to be your prerogative? Your choice?
Yeah, exactly. And when we were talking about this on our show, because we talk about this quite a bit on the Ringside Boxing Show, Teddy, the suspensions when somebody gets caught, 6-month penalties for testing dirty.
It's a joke. It's a joke. Don't even insult our intelligence. It's a joke. They only fight once a year. They only fight twice a year. There is no suspension.
Yeah.
In reality, there is no punishment being imposed. There's no accountability. Are you kidding me?
Right.
6 months when a fighter fights at that level once a year, twice a year, maybe 3 times a year, fights every 6 months.
Yeah. It's a joke. What do you think the penalty should be? If you can tell me, as first offense, should it be 2 years? Should they hold their money? The purse should be held up and a 2-year suspension. Have you given any thought on the length of what a penalty should be based on what's going on here? Because this is dangerous and terrible with this.
When I used to be the voice at ringside, I talked about it a lot of times when these things came up, because I had to be more than a guy pointing to the problem. I had to talk a little bit about a solution to the problem. You have to try to do that. So I used to do that. I think all of the above, what you just touched on. 2 years is a good start, and no money. You don't get paid, and pay a fine, and and make it what it should be to stop this from happening. It can't be a joke. It can't be a slap on the wrist. It's got to be severe enough so that it will stop this kind of behavior, this kind of thinking. I'm a person that believes, and I could be wrong, but I always believed that. But there's two parts to it. I think this is relative to what I'm saying in boxing, in this kind of way that I'm going to make this thought, this analogy, is that in our society we have a lot of problems. And if somebody knew that if they killed somebody, that they would be caught and prosecuted, and that's what I'm saying about boxing, that you're going to be caught, you're going to be prosecuted, you're going to, they're not just going to turn their eye to it. So if you knew that they were going to really do everything to catch you, to prosecute you, and you were going to get the death penalty. I'm not talking about some of these crimes that you fall under, that fall under manslaughter, where there's different circumstances, extenuating circumstances to it, and it's not, at the end it's terrible, somebody dies, but it's not premeditated. It wasn't. But I'm talking about a premeditated murder, where there's none of those extenuating. There shouldn't be anything extenuating connected to murder, but any of these things that can make it manslaughter, anything else. But there it is. Guy said, I'm going to kill this guy, whether it was for money, whether it was whatever it was for, and he kills him, and the person knows he's going to be prosecuted. He's going to be tracked down with every bit of the power that's out there to do that, and he's going to get the death penalty. I don't know. Again, how do I know? But I'm going to guess that a lot of people would not do that crime. They would persuade, just knowing that there's a good chance you're going to get caught, because the resources are going to be put there, which they're not all the time, are going to be put there to catch you. It's going to be a priority in our society, and you're going to be killed. I'm not going to say it any nicer, because that's what it is. You're going to be killed. And I think, would it stop, let's say there's 10 murders. Would it stop 2 of those from happening? I'm going to guess it is. That's why I'm doing it. So now you go to boxing and you say, okay, you're going to get caught. They're going to, that this is a priority for this business now, for this sport. They are going to, chances are, does some people get away with the murder? Yeah, I got you. Some people are going to get away with it because they're always coming up with different, more advanced ways to mask it, to dodge it. But chances are you're going to get caught. And when you get caught, your career is going to be gone. Your career is gone, whether it's 2 years, the first one, maybe it's 5 years. I don't know. Depending on, the circumstances. Maybe, definitely a second-time offender is gone. For me, there's no more, negotiating what the penalty is going to be. You're gone. That happened the first time. You got your warning and your chance to, straighten out your way of thinking, and then the things you do. But now that's gone. You're past that. So again, just like in crimes in society that we're trying to get rid of. If we're trying to get rid of this crime, and it's a crime, if we're trying to get rid of it, we have to be serious about it. And the people that are committing the crimes have to know you're serious. Right now, they know you're not serious. Right now, any sport that basically, I don't want to do it, okay, fine, no problem. You don't have to do it. Well, it's not serious.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I wanted to ask
rocket
you too
science.
about...
It's really not.
No, it's not. It's not at all. I wanted to ask you something else that you mentioned last month about there were 3 decisions in boxing fights that the brightest fight, Rigondeaux, Costa Soda, within a week of each other. And what do you think? Is that just how corrupt boxing is now, or just total incompetence? What was your
one
view?
or the other? Take your pick, and neither one is too good. Neither one is good. Neither one of them should be allowable. I mean, how would you be like to run a business, and somebody came up to you and said, your business is either full of incompetence from head to toe, or it's a corrupt business? I don't think you feel too good. Neither one of them is a good thing. So take your choice, but what's being done about it? I talked about it on my podcast. I said, hey, let's have a grading system, please, guys, please. Let's have a grading system. Great. That's great. The umpires, great. Like they do in baseball. The umpires are graded. A guy did this. If you make the parallel, if a guy performed the way those refs performed in the fights you're talking about in baseball, I don't think they'd be doing little league games, much less MLB. And in the old days, when the example would be a cop did something wrong, he'd be walking the beat in Siberia. You wouldn't see him around. I mean, and I think some of these refs should be reffing in Siberia. Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah. I mean, not that I don't care about Eskimos. I don't want them beat up either. But, I'm going to figure there's not going to be too much action with these guys in Siberia, so they can't do too much harm. But seriously, when I watch those fights, and it's one or the other, incompetence or, you wonder, or corruption. And, I mean, you're talking about in a serious business. Again, in a serious business, where you're destroying a guy. It's not like baseball where now they got, they use video tape now, and they can correct some of the mistakes. They didn't used to use it, but, it can still be a human error. Say a guy gets to first base and he's caught out when he should have been safe. All right. And you can see, it was a bad call, but he's out. Well, he comes up the next inning. Well, he comes up the inning after, and he gets another shot at it, another bite at the apple. Not in boxing. Not in boxing, buddy. You rob a guy because you're an incompetent or corrupt judge, or as a referee, you take away a win or the capacity for somebody to win that night. You know what? I've said it on ESPN for those 18 years I sat in that chair. I'll say it again. That fighter has to go into the back of the line and fight X amount of fights and face X amount of punches to get back to that place again, which he might never get back to. Chances are, if you did a study of it, chances are he doesn't get back to it. He doesn't. But either way, he shouldn't be in that position. He already earned the right to be where he was and to move forward, to get closer to getting out that door of the sport. where you accomplish the things you came to it to accomplish, getting money for your family, accomplishing things, and the glory that comes with those things, for yourself, for your family. All those things, you're close to doing that when you're in that position. And to have some incompetent freaking guy who probably never took a punch or faced a punch in his life, to have him take that away from somebody, that's terrible. It's terrible. And the worst part of it is what I said earlier, that it's forgotten about because it's boxing. That's the worst part about it. My God, people make more of a stink if somebody gets robbed of a base hit in baseball. Oh, did you see that the other night? That guy should have been safe. That guy should have been... It was a freaking...
Yeah.
It was a single, buddy. So what?
Yeah.
So what in the scheme of things? Okay, I got you. But come on. But now you compare that to boxing, what I just talked about? There is no comparison.
No.
This is the Ringside Boxing Show from Monterey, California. I'm Dennis Taylor with John J. Responte. We were talking to Teddy Atlas from ESPN, and he's also a very highly respected boxing trainer. Teddy, I think we all rolled our eyes at Canelo's franchise title that he got from the WBC not too long ago. On the one hand, there's something tantalizing about a collision of two guys who are both recognized as world champions, even if they're in the same weight class. It's probably good box office and good TV ratings. On the other hand, there's only one world, and having more than one world champion at each weight defies logic. And you and John and I are pretty much from the same vintage. I'm 66. John's about your age. How do you feel about multiple sanctioning bodies and all the title belts? Purity aside, is it good for boxing?
Sanctioning fees. Let's get right to that. That's why it exists, so they make more money.
Okay.
So is the money going to a pension fund? No. Is the money going to better medical, help? No. Is the money going to any of these things that can improve the sport, that can improve the life of the athlete, of the fighters? No. It's going to these organizations in sanctioning fees so their pools can get bigger. So and you're diminishing the product. You're diluting the product. I mean, after a while, you put so much water in Gatorade, it's not Gatorade anymore, guys. And when I say diluted, I don't just mean in the way that is obvious that we're talking about, but I'm talking about in other areas when it comes to the way fans look at the sport, that you're taking away the credibility of the sport. You're deteriorating that. And when you start to lose the credibility of anything, you got a problem. And we've lost a lot of fans because of the things we're talking about. The sport is a great sport, and you're still going to have fans because of the nature of the sport that I talked about earlier when we started this conversation. Nowhere else are you going to be able to witness two men, and that's the right word, come as a witness and see how two men are going to behave. Really. Wow. In these kind of circumstances. But, when you start doing these things and allowing these things to happen, and you have Teddy Atlas on his podcast talking about them, saying, hey, I just went down to Canal Street in Chinatown in Manhattan, and I bought a few knockoffs, because they sell them if you know which stores to go into. Louis Vuitton knockoff, you buy, it looks pretty good, get a nice Louis Vuitton bag, for instead of paying, $2,500, you pay $10. And the only thing is, while you're walking out, the handle falls off. That could be a little bit of a problem. Or whatever, a Rolex watch, or Versace, whatever. But they're all over the place down there. That is what they have reduced themselves to. That's the best way I described it that day when we talk about it. Knockoffs. That's not good. In a serious sport that should be respected, like boxing, and the fighters that need to be respected in boxing, these noble warriors that I call them, to be in a sport where you're using the term knockoffs, and then not only does it diminish the sport, and does it take away the relevance, the credibility of the sport, it makes it less relevant. But then, which is bad enough, but you have you got a situation where if you go to the root of why, does anyone ever ask why? Why are we having this? Because of sanction and fees. It allows more sanction and fees. But there's another reason. When somebody becomes the franchise, or whatever the hell word they use, I think that's the word they use, they become the franchise. Yeah, they become the franchise guy. He no longer has to follow rules. He no longer has to live up to a mandatory. So call me cynical if you want. I'm sorry, because I've been in a business that kind of moves you towards cynicism. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But call me cynical, guys. But I got to wonder, is it because a guy like Canelo, who's a golden goose, and I love Canelo, he's great for the sport. Great for the sport. Great for the sport. I didn't think he beat Triple G, but that's okay. But now you got a guy that's the golden goose, not just for Golden Boy, De La Hoya's crew, but for the WBC, for whatever organization he represents. He's the most important guy in boxing right now because he brings the most eyeballs and the most money. He generates the most money. I mean, that doesn't change in any sport or any business. Whoever makes the most money is the king. And here you got a franchise tag that he doesn't have to face a mandatory. So, again, call me cynical, but I'm saying you're protecting the guy. I'm saying that you're in the protection rackets now. That the guy doesn't, if let's say Heyman has the Charlo brother, that, they don't want to fight Charlo. Not that Charlo will beat him, but, it'll be an interesting fight. But why fight Charlo? Well, why take that? Why? You got the golden goose. You can fight bigger fights with that zone money of $300-something million that's out there for you to collect. Why? I don't want to bother myself with that risk and that those situations where it's below me in the level that I can earn money and everything else that's related to my thinking with this. I don't want to fight the guy. All right, no problem. Let's give him the franchise tag. You got a bubble around you, buddy. You're untouchable. Yeah, you're not Elliot Ness, the FBI guy from that movie, but you're untouchable just the same. We just made you untouchable. You don't have to do what other people have to do. You don't have to fight somebody who's a mandatory every 9 months. You're free to fight whoever you want. Do whatever you want. You're untouchable. You're protected. You paid us. You gave us we get our cents. We get our sanction and fee, and we protect you. Wow. Think of it that way. Back in the 1920s we are. That's where we are. The only thing we're missing is Frankie Carbo. He was in the 40s, so But we're in the same place. We're back in the 30s and 20s where they had the key valve investigations because the mob was running it. You're in the protection racket. That's what I just described. Nobody else is going to describe it that way.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Hey, Teddy, is the welterweight division's Game of Thrones down to Spence and Crawford now? Has everybody else settled into a second or third tier?
Yeah. I mean, listen, Manny is an interesting fly in the ointment for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get down to the real, you hope to be responsible and you think you're being responsible and know what the hell responsible is, the answer is because Spence and Crawford stand out.
Yep.
Spence, big, strong, huge, dynamic, relentless, mentally, physically, technically knows how to fight, Olympian. He go get you, he can box. He can counter. I mean, he's a monster in that division. And then you got Crawford. He's a monster in a different way. Long, tall, controls range, counterpunch, creative, great instincts. I'll say it again. Great instincts. I'll say it again. Yeah. Great instincts. I mean, the guy is something. Creates it as he goes along. He's like a great jazz musician. He creates his own notes when he has to. He's got a great team behind him that's always got him prepared for what he's facing. Always. Yeah. Always. Spence too. So they're above everyone else. I mean, how can you say no? I mean, to be honest, But they remind me, and the other division that reminds me a little bit of this, what I'm going to get to, is the light heavyweight division. And by the way, when you guys were nice enough to be talking about the fighters I've trained, and it's fine, but you forgot to mention I got a kid now who's a light heavyweight champ of the world, and Alexander Vosic, a great kid, and I think when I talk about the welterweight division, I think of the light heavyweight division, how competitive they are, how good they are right now. And they're the only divisions, I got to tell you the truth, that bring me back to maybe the healthiest place, unless you really go back to the 20s to 30s, the 40s. But if you just go back and stay within some realm of a modern era, you go back to the 80s, the 70s, late 70s, the 80s, the healthiest era in boxing outside of what I'm talking about when back in the 30s and 40s when boxing was bigger than baseball. But the 80s was an unbelievable time. Well, part of it was obviously there was free television. There was network TV. You were on network TV Saturdays, so you could relate to who these guys were. You identified with these guys. You knew them. So that's a big part of it. But there's another part of it, the talent that was out there. I mean, and there's one other part of it, maybe the most important part. They fought each other. That's it. Yeah. Talk about formula for success in anything, especially in this sport. You had, in the welterweights, oh my goodness, you had Sugar Ray Leonard, you had Tommy Hearn, you had Roberto Duran, you had Pernell Whitaker, you had Wilfred Benitez, you had Aaron Pryor coming up from a junior welterweight, a lightweight junior welterweight who was something else. I mean, the talent that you had, and they all were fighting each other.
Yep.
Roberto Duran, all these guys. Wow. And then you look at the light heavyweights, and it's unbelievable today. So, yeah, when you mention Spence and you mention Crawford, and then but the next tier you got Garcia and Porter, those guys, Pacquiao, of course. But when you start talking about that division, it reminds me, it brings me back to the only thing that can make me even think about that era that was so strong and so good.
Who do you consider to be the best fighter on the planet today?
Wow. All right. I'll probably give you a 1A and a 1B. I'm not beyond embarrassing myself a little bit. I'm taking a little bit of the easy way out. But I would say I would start with Lomachenko and Crawford. Would be my 1-2 punch. Not a bad 1-2 punch.
That's right. Yep.
From a technical standpoint, Lomachenko is spectacular.
Yeah.
Great talent too, but technically superior to what we're used to seeing. Creative, everything, and exciting, and mentally, right on the button. And then, Crawford, probably more physical ability, better puncher, different dynamic, different dimension to him with the length, the ability to control the ring on the outside. Yet, the lack of hesitation to go get you. The confidence and the, the killer instinct, whatever the frick you want to call it, but the gumption, the pride, the makeup to say, let me go get this guy. Let me go get him. I could win this way, but you know what? Let me go get him. That's one of the reasons why I put Sugar Ray Leonard, even though I probably favor the fighters of the 20s, 30s, 40s in many ways. I mean, where are you going to get guys that had 300 fights like Henry Armstrong? Fought 30-something times a year. Come on, that's never going to exist. I know it can exist. I know the era wouldn't allow it to exist anymore with the times. I get it. But these were special guys. But the reason why I put a guy like Sugar Ray Leonard with anybody is because of what I just said about Crawford. Not only was he good in all those areas technically, and talent was off the charts, and he could fight inside, outside, he could punch, he just had the physical abilities of speed and everything else, and like I said, technically solid, but he could win fights because of those things, but he still pressed himself. He still pushed himself. He still hounded himself to find a way to get you. A lot of guys don't do that. I mean, why did he do it? Why? He didn't have to do it. Because he could. Because he figured if he could, he would. Because he wanted to see how good he was. He wanted to be everything that he was capable of being. He didn't want to just be 3/4 of it. He didn't want to be 98% of it. If there was a chance to get the guy, I'm going to get him. But, Ray, there's a little more risk in that, maybe. No, there's not. That would be his attitude, I think. No, there's not. There's a risk in not finding out. There's a risk in me not taking it to the tilt. I still do it responsibly. I still do it smart. I'm not stupid. I'm not going to walk into a punch. But I am going to do everything I'm capable of doing it. I am going to explore all of those areas. That makes somebody special.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a good one for you, Teddy. We're all born in the 1950s, all three of us. Which era of fighters from the past 5 decades do you consider the best?
Oh, wow.
I know.
I just said the 80s, I think. The 80s, I think, was tremendous. Late 70s, 80s, whatever. I mean, I think they were tremendous. But then I go back to Henry Armstrong, Sugar Ray Robinson, Benny Leonard, Tony Cancelleri.
Yeah.
Barney
Ross.
Oh.
Yep.
So many. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So probably I would start with that era and then go to the 80s.
Yeah.
I'd start with that era, though. Because where are you going to get guys that had 110 knockouts like Armstrong? 110 knockouts. think it was 110, somewhere in that area. I mean, just mind-boggling. And held 3 full weight titles. None of these in between where you could be a champion of 52 weight classes. Oh, this guy's a champion of 52 weight classes. Oh, really? 52. Wow. I mean, but, seriously, he held the featherweight, lightweight, and welterweight titles simultaneously. And he really won the middleweight against Severino Garcia, but he was robbed. They gave him a draw.
Mm-hmm.
They gave him a draw. So he really should have, and he got robbed. So he really should have, because he wouldn't do business with the fellas. So he really should have been featherweight, lightweight, welterweight, middleweight champ at the same time. Oh, my God. God. I mean, how is that possible? And so how can I not pick that era? How can I not, pay tribute to that man and that era and all the fighters that he fought? Barney Ross and one after another. That's just incredible. I mean, he would fight guys that it wasn't like today where it's an A side and a B side. It would, either side could win. Yeah. And he was fighting that kind of level fighters every freaking time.
Yep, that's right. I don't think he gets enough credit. Do you, Teddy? I mean, he's not talked about very much.
The people don't even know about who he is. No, it's terrible. It's
phenomenal.
A shame.
It is.
It's a shame. All those guys. All of those guys. I mean, it's just incredible. See, I go back even further. I used to read all that stuff and whatever I could see in the 18-millimeter film that Cus would get from Jim Jacobs and Bill Caton. I look at all these guys, Henry Armstrong, all of them I got to watch before ESPN paid $80 million to buy it. Mm-hmm. And then I read about guys, hear about guys like Sam Langford. Sam Langford fought he had 300 fights. He fought from lightweight to heavyweight.
Yeah.
And beat all great fighters. And nobody would ever let him fight for the title because he was a black fighter back in a terrible time. Mm-hmm. And they wouldn't fight him for a title, so he fought him and beat all of them in non-title fights. What a special guy Sam Langford was.
Yeah, he sure was.
Oh, my goodness. What a special guy. And nobody knows who he is.
Yeah. It's
what
tragic.
A shame.
It is.
I got to tell you a story about Sam Langford.
Sure.
If there's people out there listening, young people that know this sport, don't know this sport, want to know it better, whatever, you got to hear this story. I don't know if it's a legendary story. So with legendary stories, you don't know how real it is and if it was embellished a little bit. I don't know. I just know I love the story and I love Sam Langford. That's all I do know. So I'm going to tell the story. So he's fighting a guy, and and in those days they would erect a stadium sometimes in a field. They build a stadium, put a stadium out, 20,000 people come, 10,000 people, whatever. And they put the stadium up, and the weigh-in would be the same day. They'd weigh up in the morning, and they walk out to the ring with the robe over their shoulders. And in those days, sometimes they fight 20 rounds, 30 rounds, 40 rounds. Yeah, 40 rounds. So I don't remember if this was a 40-round fight, whatever it was, but all I know is here's the great Sam Langford. He's already great. He's got 200 fights. He's Sam Langford. It's like meeting Babe Ruth. This is Sam Langford you're in front of. And so the other fighter is a good fighter. He's beaten some really good fighters, but he's fighting Sam Langford. So you know that old saying, you wonder where it comes from. Who knows? but bring your lunch. So in those days, if you're going to be out there for 40 rounds, you're going to spend the day out there, you better bring your lunch. So in those days, they didn't know the things they know today with, all the kind of things for proper replenishment and training and everything else. But their thing was to eat an orange. That was their thing. So everybody would bring a crate of oranges. So you're carrying a crate. So you're walking out to the ring, and you're carrying a crate of oranges. So this is what they did. So this guy's got his crate of oranges, and he's already mesmerized and taken and probably a little bit obviously intimidated at some level, fighting Sam Langford. And here he is. They're getting ready to walk out to the ring, to this field. The guy's got his crate of oranges, and Sam's got 5. And he's just holding them in one hand. He's cradling them. 5 oranges. So the guy's nervous to begin with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the guy's already nervous. He's already a nervous wreck. And he's fighting Sam Langford, so he looks over, and he can't help himself. He says, Sam, you miscounted, Sam. You only got 5 oranges. And Sam doesn't even hesitate. He looks at him and says, only going to need 5. He goes out there, knocks him out in 5. Only going to need 5.
Oh, man. That's a great one. Okay, Teddy, speaking of a heavyweight, about which heavyweight, past or present, on his best night beats Muhammad Ali on his best night?
People are going to go nuts when I say this. They're going to go nuts. All right. Nuts. I'm going to say 2 guys. First one, they're not going to go so nuts. They're going to say smaller, but it doesn't matter. Everything is relative. So if it was a same era, the guy would have been bigger, right? Am I right about that?
Yeah.
So it all evens out. He might be a little smaller, but he'd be bigger than he was in his era. So it all evens out. So I'm going to say this one's not the one they're going to go nuts on. I'm going to say, although a lot of people go nuts because they hear Ali, and that's the only guy they think of is Ali. And they forget about the guy I'm about to mention, Joe Louis. Joe Louis. The greatest finisher of all time. He would have hurt Ali somewhere with a time left hook, pull it back, somewhere. Just, a little bit like the Englishman had caught Ali earlier, with the
Henry Cooper?
Yeah, Cooper, the man who would bleed a lot, but had a good left hook, and he caught him, and, Ali barely survived, and Ali was great. But Joe Louis catches him, you ain't surviving, buddy. So I'm going to say Joe Louis, and this is the one that's going to make people pull their hair out, but that's okay. I like people to pull their hair out. It's a good thing. It invigorates the scalp, and it grows back stronger and healthier. I'm going to say Sonny Liston. Yeah, I know he lost to him twice. I know. I got you. I don't know what was going on. You don't know. The fans don't know. I'm the first to admit I don't know. But I'm a little skeptical. And I take nothing away from Ali. Great. He is great for so many reasons. Pioneer, everything. He was like the flood and catfish hunter in baseball that opened the doors for free agency for people, for the ball players to make more money. Ali did that too. He did so many things, socially, everything. But Sonny Liston was so much better than people realize. He might have had the best jab in the history of the sport. It was hard. It was a foam pole. It could knock you out. And it was the longest jab I ever saw in my life, ever. And accurate and straight and hard, like I said already. And he could fight. Technically, he knew how to fight. He could punch with either hand. He was big. He was a fighter. But he had a lot of baggage from his life and things that were surrounded in his life that he never got rid of. And there's a lot of question marks about those fights with Ali. Was there some funny business going on? You know, I don't know. I watched those tapes because I was up at Cus and I got to watch them. And all I know is that I've seen Liston fight before, and then when I put the tape on to watch him fight Ali in the first one, it just didn't seem like he was trying the way he was trying in other fights. It almost seemed like he was missing those punches on purpose. And again, no conspiracy theories here. It's too late. It's gone. It's gone. I'm not doing an RFK, JFK, thing with Oliver Stone or whoever the hell the director was. Yeah. I'm not trying to go down that road, but I'm just saying when I watched it, it looked like he could hit him. When I was wondering, why aren't you hitting him? This isn't a movie where you have to pull your punches. It looks like you're doing that, Sonny. It looks like you're doing that, Sonny. I don't know, but that's how I feel, and that's what I'm going to say. No matter what people react to it, I could give two hoots.
Exactly. Okay, how about Mike Tyson? You trained him. Where do you rank a primetime Tyson among the all-time greats?
I don't. I know that's going to get people nuts. And that's going to go, it's sour grapes. How did you do that to Iron Mike? Oh, my God. Oh, well, I just did it.
You just did it.
First thing I'd say to you guys that are having blood pressure issues right now, hearing this, is Tyson was maybe the greatest switch hitter since Mickey Mantle. Could punch from either side of the plate with power, like Mickey Mantle did. Where he could punch with the left or the right. Ernie Shavers could punch with the right. Wilder now can punch with the right. Max Baer could punch with the right. Joe Frazier could punch with the left hook. But Tyson could punch with either hand, just as ferocious, just as damaging. And he had speed, uncanny, unseen to that point maybe is even fair. Unmatched maybe is fair. Speed to go along with the power. And his technique, his style that he was taught, in that style, in that very specific, definitive style that he was taught, allowed him to create opportunities for that speed and that power to really show itself and to be used properly. So yeah, he was dangerous. He was fun. He was a meteorite that flashed across the sky during our time. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he was all those things. He was something to watch. But he wasn't a planet. He wasn't a planet. He wasn't Joe Louis. He wasn't Muhammad Ali. What do I mean by that? Planets have substance. They have more than just rock that's on fire that can blow you out of the sky and sizzle past you, but it's gone. It's gone. It hits something and blows up. Planets don't do that. They stay around. And there's a reason why Ali and Lewis and they survived all these things they went through and they survived the fights they went through and found a way because they had that. They had that. Tyson didn't have that. For me, a fight doesn't become a fight until there's something to overcome. Up to that, it's an athletic venture. It's an exhibition. How good, how fast, how talented. Beautiful, nice, applaud, enjoy it. But it's not a fight until there is resistance. Something to overcome. Every time there was resistance for Tyson, you could, and again, it's not me, guys. Don't go crazy. I'm just a messenger, guys. I'm just a messenger. It's out there. Open your eyes. Go into the libraries. Look at it. It's there. I didn't just make this shit up. It's there, fellas. Every time he faced resistance, he had to overcome something. He failed. You can't tell me one fight that he overcame something. You can't. You can't. Don't give me Razor Ruddock. Don't give me, please. Don't give me whatever. Every time, whether it was Holyfield or Buster Douglas or, guys, Kevin McBride. I like Kevin McBride. Game guy. God bless him. And give him credit. Really. But Lewis didn't lose to a guy like Kevin McBride. Neither did Ali. I know it was late in his career, but they didn't lose to these guys. They didn't perform that way when the moment came. They didn't disappear. They didn't evaporate, like I used to say on Friday Night Fights, like a puddle on a hot summer night or a hot summer day, and it's 110 degrees, and that puddle evaporates right in front of you, disappears. Yeah. They didn't do that. They didn't disappear when it got hot, when the temperatures rose, when the moments came, when you had to overcome something. You had to find a way. They didn't disappear. No. They found a way. Mm-hmm. They overcame what they had to overcome. They dug down. And he said, let's go. And they went. Tyson never did that. Tyson never did that. And because he never did that, I can't make him great. I'll say he had great talent. I just said it. I'll say he had as good a talent as anybody. I said that again. But when you say overall package of greatness, it involves the other things I'm talking about. He didn't have those other things.
Yeah. Hey, man, you have been unbelievably generous with your time today. I got one more for you, though. If Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. and Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. got into a street fight today, who wins?
Senior.
Senior wins.
Yeah.
We think so, too. All right. Enough said. Hey, Teddy Atlas is a legendary trainer. He's a Hall of Fame broadcaster. He's one of the most compelling personalities in the sport. He's the founder of the Dr. Theodore Atlas Foundation, which awards grants and scholarships to deserving individuals. And his biography is called Atlas, From the Streets to the Ring, A Son's Struggle to Become a Man. Teddy, congratulations, man, on a very full and diverse life. Great career, and thanks so much for giving us so much of your time today on the Ringside Boxing Show. This is a real pleasure. I hope you had as much fun as we had.
When you talk to two gentlemen, it's easy. So thanks, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teddy.
Thank you, Ted.
Love to do it again someday.
Take care.
All right. Take care, my friend.
Fellas.
Okay.
Take care.
Teddy Atlas on the Ringside Boxing Show. Hey, do you like this podcast? Do us a solid. Tell other boxing fans about us. Post the Ringside Boxing Show on your social media outlets and help us grow. Also, if you have not yet discovered the best website in the world for daily boxing news, you got something to add to your bucket list right this minute. We update ringsideboxingshow.com 365 days a year with the biggest headlights and most intriguing stories from all over the globe. It's absolutely beautiful. This should be your first stop every morning. Might be the only boxing site you need to visit all day. Check it out right now and be amazed. ringsideboxingshow.com. We want to thank our expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and my partner here, John J. Responsi, for their weekly contribution to this show, as well as our outstanding British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin, and, of course, another huge thanks to today's featured guest, legendary trainer and Hall of Fame broadcaster, Teddy Atlas. And as always, thank you, Ringside Nation, for being a part of our worldwide audience again today. Keep your chin tucked. We'll talk to you again next week on the Ringside Boxing Show.
Well, it's a great day for me to whoop somebody's ass. It's a bad day, so you better get off of my back. You might get cold cocked if you cross my path. It's a great day